verse 12.
It's not ready yet. Talk about it now. Go.
Hey, shalom, everybody. Another Jewcast. And
this is the Luke Ford replacement show tonight, actually. It's not a normal Jewcast.
Yep.
This is the Tuesday night Luke Ford replacement show. We're encroaching on his territory. I'm not staying in my lane.
We're going to open up with a song in Hebrew called a niggin. This one will be Psalm 51, verse 12. Lev Torah Bora Elohim. Lev Tahar, the pure heart, Bora Elohim, God created within me. Baruach Nachon, the clean spirit, Bekadesh Bekirbi, should renew within me. Al tashlikeni milfanecha, don't forsake me from before you. Veruach Kajecha, in the Holy Spirit, Al tichak mimeni, don't take from me. Lev Toar Bori Elohim. Ruach Nachon Bekadesh Bekirbi. Lev Toar Bori Elohim. Ruach Nachon Bekadesh Bekirbi. Al tashlicheni milfanechu veruach kadshechu al tichak mimeni. Okay, hopefully that sets the tone for a wonderful conversation, and we'll have purified hearts and purified souls to continue forward.
Purified hearts and purified souls. Sounds like a good message. All right, so what's been on your mind, Duvid? You were just watching Norvin's stream. Do you have any remarks on that, considering you were banned in the chat?
Yeah, I'm just a little random. I'm not sure he has too much scholarship or anything. I just saw he was talking about me, so I figured I'd check it out. I guess he watched that stream with Rodney and Brundle stream on that, and he mentioned that I might be debating him, which that looks like the schedule. 3:00 tomorrow, I'll be debating a Rodney movement critic, and so just random. I tuned on to Norwin. I also wanted to clarify that because I guess Brundle was trying to start trash talking and whatever, hyping things up like I was trash talking about Norwin. That's not true. Although obviously we disagree on many things. I wasn't trash talking about him.
Yeah.
Hold on. Yeah. I mean, I didn't think that there was beef between you and Norvin at any point. I'm curious, what are you and Rodney going to be blood sportsing or debating about? Because I didn't know that you had any disagreements. I mean, he might disagree with the fact that you're a Jew, but other than that,
I don't think we actually have too many disagreements. It might just be a nice conversation because, I'm saying like we have different lifestyles and different ways of life, and he's a cultured person that likes different understanding, different things. And we were going to talk about the possible Balkanization of America and maybe world politics, the Jewish question, Jewish power, and how the untanglement of Jewish power in America that will benefit everybody.
I see. What are some things that you might expect to have in common with Mr. Martin or disagree with him on? Are there any issues that you expect to see coming up?
He sounds like he knows quite a bit about Persia, Iran, which I know a little bit about Middle Eastern politics, and I've studied Islam and that, and maybe some foreign policy, maybe Israel, maybe economics. I'm not sure. I guess we're willing to talk about anything. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. I'm not actually preparing anything. I would have prepared something if it was like specific topic, just so I had my resources and facts at hand. But I think it's just going to be a conversation, and I doubt it's going to be two blood sports because he's a real person using his real name, and he's more intellectual and you well read. So it probably won't be too much. It'll probably be more cordial than with Brundlefly or even Halsey.
Yeah. Well, I think that you and Halsey have more disagreements. So I think there's a reason why whenever you and Halsey get into it, it's more intense. It's because you're both talking about the fate of our people.
Yeah, as opposed
it's something shared, as opposed to two peoples who can more easily go their own ways, i.e., or e.g., pardon me, e.g., you and Norvin, or me and I don't know, any of the people on the show, any of the sort of WN types.
Yeah, we could just agree to disagree. And maybe Luke was in a different position because he kind of had that like white Anglo thing and the Judaism at the same time. And so he was trying to push like some like Anglo-Jewish alliance that Jews are better off this way against my multiculturalism. And maybe Halsey, he actually seemed more on my side on that issue. And if Rodney's opinion on the benefits of multiculturalism for America, and he might have opinions like Jared Taylor, where he in essence agrees with me that you could have multicultural urban areas, and the balkanization of America will create different places. Some of them more ethnically white, and some places that are more multicultural.
I mean, there have always been urbanized ethnic areas. That's been a constant, even when societies have been more homogenous than they are, let's say, today in like post-colonial regions of the world or colonial regions of the world, like America or the New World or Australia or whatnot. Like there have always been port cities. I don't think are there any people who are arguing against like port cities, for instance, or open universities? I mean,
I don't think too many of those people are really well thought out. So if you're talking about Europe and like someplace like Norway or I don't know if Norway is a port city, but like places like Belgium or I think most of those people there prefer multicultural areas because it's good for economics. And so most of the people arguing that case here in America are not really well thought out, and maybe Luke actually has a background in economics, but I'm not sure he's really he probably doesn't actually have a strategy. He's just a talk show host trying to get people to have interesting conversation, as opposed to actually developing a strategy, something that will advance people.
Well, his strategy is stay in your laneism, esoteric stay in your laneism. And he's interested in human biodiversity, I suppose. That's something that he's very in favor of, is saying he's pro-human biodiversity or pro-evolution arguments, like talking about human evolution will convince people. Kind of like Al Stankard, they have a similar idea there. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, he has ideas that he feels strongly about, but actually like a vision for the future that to get together and propose a workable idea. Like I'm an engineer in real estate development or something where you have a multi-year proposal and a strategy and a budget, and that's actually professionally what I do sometimes, like financial engineering and stuff like that, which is actually pretty boring. And maybe Brundlefly actually does some of that stuff for a living, so relatively that might be more boring, but that's more my speed to talk about these boring things. I have a feeling Rodney is probably he's actually a lawyer, and he knows about American Indian tribes and stuff like that, so he might be able to have more intellectual, like strategizing, multi-year vision, logistics discussion, which is more my speed.
The way I see, though, with things like that is there are so many factors involved. In a way, it's so theoretical, it's so hypothetical, it's almost LARPing when people have conversations about prospective plans that might be implemented. It might be a very fruitful conversation, intellectually speaking, but it doesn't usually end up leading anywhere. You see what I'm saying? because it's disconnected from power. Usually, there's always a monetary interest in the status quo in any given context, I would say, let alone other interests. You see what I'm saying? People prefer the status quo, among other things, in a political context, in a social context.
Well, you talk public policy, so
people prefer the status quo.
I was at University of Michigan, and I took courses in the school, the Gerald Ford School of Public Policy. President Ford was alumni of University of Michigan, and there's a School of Public Policy there. And you actually, like, how do you lobby? How do you get legislation passed? How do you get things done? Which is kind of boring, to a large extent. But there's a lot to it. It takes a lot of work. The lobbying aspect, and some people, it's just like it's basically just a Jewish science to them. How do you get bills passed? How do you have an idea, push it through, get a bunch of people to get legislation written, and all this different stuff. And you even like the alt-right now looking at how do you get candidates? How do we get our candidates into office? Like Patrick Little, I hear now he's polling it close to nothing, and saying like, yeah, that's what we've been doing for decades. Like I'm saying, we're Jews. That's what we do. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's Jews. That's what we're doing. I mean, there's truth to that, but we could analyze, why that is, etc. endlessly. I think that's an interesting take.
Mayor de Blasio. I'm saying like my landlord. De
Blasio is an interesting guy.
Well, I mean, my landlord in Brooklyn was a Baba Verkossid, Fleischer. You could even see it on Twitter, and he to some extent groomed de Blasio. De Blasio was a city council person in Brooklyn, and to some extent the Jews groomed him.
Oh yeah, I know. My dad is let's just say my dad is one of the influential reasons as to why de Blasio is elected right now. It's kind of funny, actually. I totally disagree with him on this, and we always get into huge arguments about this, but he funded a large part of his campaign and is now responsible for one of de Blasio's signature legislative moves, which was just rolled out and has like these signs all over New York City. And it's so embarrassing because it's like, oh great, like of all the things to have tied to my family, it's like fucking Bill de Blasio. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of him just because he seems to be fraudulent. He was formerly named Warren Wilhelm, but he switched that around for political reasons. I don't know. I don't really trust him that much, but I don't really like Bloomberg that much either. I think then again, both have upsides. I mean, I don't know. It's New York. What can you do? What do you think about go ahead.
Well, it's like stock trading. I had a friend who you worked in an investment house, and basically they invested in everything, like the penny type stocks, the new companies coming onto the exchange, and they threw a little bit of money at all of the companies. And if they were duds and did bad, they took the loss on the money. And if they did good, they invested more money. And with politicians, I'm saying in large, like the Jewish Federation community, that's what we do. Just someone running for office that has a decent chance of winning, we're probably going to send them to Israel. We're going to invite them to our events. And if they are friendly to our community or their community, we might try to help advance them in terms of fundraising for their events, in terms of getting people to vote for them, introducing them to networks, and saying it's not just Jews that do it, it's everyone, like the NRA and the Gambling Association, alcohol.
It's group self-interest, basically, or in-group interest, effectively. And this is one of the in-groups, or there are various sort of Hebrew in-groups, I guess, sort of, as it were. There's the secular Hebrew community, which is kind of a left-wing thing. Then there are the various religious Jewish communities, which have differing political affiliations. It's quite nuanced, but I totally see what you're saying, and I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, that is what Jews do, for better or for worse.
I live
in the present situation. I'd say that it's a dynamic inherent to the diaspora, or at least it's been exacerbated significantly by it, because it's implicit on Jews being this like in-group within, or an exogenous in-group, out-group within another civilization, sort of, or an interest group within a civilization. But I totally see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I lived in Hasidic Brooklyn. I'll put this on the screenshot. Like I studied
where around
in Borough Park,
Brooklyn, Crown Heights.
This is No,
Or
in Borough Park in Brooklyn.
Okay, Borough Park.
And all the politicians came to our synagogues, whether Democratic or Republican. I don't think Analytic Chick, she seemed to not understand what I was saying. Like, these have to be bipartisan issues. When you have a large organization, you need your interests met, whether the Republicans win or the Democrats win. And you might have a little bit better, like, okay, if one side wins, it's going to be better for you. But you can't, so to say, put all your eggs in one basket. And that's the nature of lobbying. So these people, like, coming onto the alt-right, and now they're just avowing themselves to the political process. And that's like Frame Game or something. Like, I like Frame Game. There's nothing wrong with him, but I say to some extent, he's just like B-level scholarship because he's just saying, like, yeah, this is what we do, and he's giving free legal advice to people. But is he really an expert at it? Does he really know what he's talking about? Does he really know what he's doing? Yeah, to some extent, like, he's giving good knowledge, but it's just B-rate scholarship. And is the alt-right really going to train and lobby hundreds of politicians? Then you have a little pressure against them. And yeah, man, but if you were brought up in the Federation type style, like, you probably grew up with those meeting politicians and pushing and lobbying. And if you go to a Jewish private school, that's like your classroom assignment is to, like, call your local congressperson, go to Washington,
or about some political issue. Exactly. Show some sort of activism, participate in your community. Exactly. Like, mine was about environmental activism, for instance. That was my project at my prep school.
Yeah, and so relatively, that's just like American culture. If you have a good education, you know how that works. And if you're part of an interest group, so if you take high birth or you're part of aristocracy, you have an interest. So, like, whatever, if your family's wealthy, it has a stake in a business interest, like maybe real estate developers or owners of any type of company, or brokerages or biotech or any of those things. You have to have your interests meet, and you need a team of lawyers and lobbyists to make sure that you're on top of it. And some of it is saying this is like boring ABCs of what people go to university to learn. And then it's not really subversive Jewish tactics, although Jews are disrepresented, overrepresented in doing it. And like Jewish history, where you had your court Jews, or I think in German or Yiddish they called the Stadtrats, who you lobbied on behalf of the community to the nobility. There is a history to it where in Europe that Jews had a special place in it. But here in America, it's just that Jews are overrepresented in the field, but there's nothing particularly Jewish about it. Everybody does it.
Mm. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, the funny thing is, even in the context outside of Europe, these things existed to a degree. There were certain jobs that were really largely dominated by Jews, although they weren't exclusively Jews. Certain fields of merchantry, certain types of trading, certain banking-related occupations, certain even within the military, like I think some engineering occupations. I think some definitely doctors. Definitely a lot of Jewish doctors in the Ottoman Empire, the Umayyad Caliphate, and just within the Arab world in general. So yeah, I think that it's just the way. And Jews have always been in a sort of, I guess, kind of proto-white collar people, as it were. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we always had been establishing trade posts and whatnot, rather similar to the Phoenicians. We had established trade posts with. What do you call them? We had established trade posts with
the Silk Road through China.
Well, yeah, of course. But I was also thinking of southern India. I was thinking of Axum or Kush or the sort of Horn of Africa. We had established a trade post there very early on, and also all throughout the Mediterranean. So we had really expanded very early on, and
the Talmud talks
taken up things like mercantile work.
India. Because they needed certain things for ritualistic purposes, and it talked about like certain silks or spices that you could only get from China and India, and those things have been in existence for thousands of years. And Islam, we were talking about that after last night. I think it was offline, but what's really Jewish and what did we pick up from different cultures? So you go, okay, you're maybe an Iraqi Jew, some could be a German Jew, an Indian Jew, and the Jewish elements that are common among all of them. and then the different things that we picked up from different cultures. So, Jews have always been doctors. So you have your derivatives of money lending. So you think like, okay, the fields today that Jews are disproportionately representative of are any of the derivatives of money lending, which includes law, accounting, any form of brokerage, from insurance brokerage, mortgage brokerage, stock brokerage. All of these relatively are derivatives of what would have just been money lending for hundreds of years across Europe, and today our whole modern professional fields that are built off of it, and today have nothing to do with Judaism. But in Europe, over the period of time, they would have maybe been dominated by Jews, and because they included money lending and interest, all of those things would have been dominated by Jews. So now in America, they're just disproportionately, like 10-20% of the field, or maybe even 30-40%. And some of them are dominated by Jews, even though Jews only make up 2-3% of the population. Then you have like engineering and science and medicine, which Jews are also disproportionately representative. And you could look at like the Kaufman's argument, just that we're intellectual people, we're in urban areas, we find these things interesting, and that's got nothing to do with money lending or trading and being middlemen and businessmen in that manner. And it is pretty interesting. I'm constantly studying the history of it. You could see on my bookshelves, I have like the Jews of China, the Jews of Japan, the Jews of India, the Jews of Africa, and all of these things hold through in every culture. And as I said, I work with my local Chabad training school, and we send people all over the world, and we could give them a basic Jewish education, and they could basically thrive in any type of society.
Sorry, my microphone was off. But yeah, that's fascinating. I've recently been studying the Jews of India because there are a lot of Iraqi Jews in India. I find the topic fascinating, and I'm going to be doing a podcast on it soon with an Indian gentleman.
Yeah, I could bring over some books if you get someone else on the show or something. I'll take a little break. I'll walk over to my bookshelf. You have I think they say there was Casper da Gama. You have the famous Vasco da Gama.
Yeah.
And there was another person, like a generation after him, though, Casper da Gama, that was a converted Jew. And so in that time, where the first Spanish explorers were going to India, they found the Jews in Kerala. So the Jews in Kerala probably go back at least 1,000 years, maybe 2,000 years, and you had certain native Jews there. And then about 250 years ago, you have the Baghdadi Jews that start moving into India. Most famously the Sassoon banking family that moves into China and India, and others also. And it's an interesting history. And until today, I have a book of famous Indian Jews. I went to my local Hare Krishna temple and was just going through pictures, and people knew a lot of these names. Have you heard of the Rif, the famous rabbi 1,000 years ago, was a commentary on the Talmud, Alfasi, Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi.
Yes, that sounds familiar.
Okay, I'm sorry, my roommate's using the microwave.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If you'd like to mute your microphone for a second, that's fine. Or you can keep it on. Whatever you prefer.
Alfasi is a famous 1,000-year-old rabbinic family, and then there's the Arbinu, the Divine Mother, who it was like a Hindu sect that's pretty popular. They're around today, but this descendant of Alfasi, her name was Alfasi, ends up during World War II moving to India, and she becomes the Divine Mother. But her name's Alfasi, and she's a direct descendant of this the Rif, the Rabbi Alfasi from 1,000 years ago. And
yeah, that name sounds familiar. I know that I've heard that name before, and that's fascinating. Yeah, a lot of these lineages
so everyone in
the Hebrew
India,
people go back for a long time. Vasco da Gama, though, you wouldn't even would you even count him as a Jew, though? Because he
Casper da Gama, not Vasco da Gama.
Or sorry, Casper da Gama, rather. That's who I meant. Because he's a Hebrew, but he's not a Jew. You know what I mean? He doesn't practice Judaism, but he is a Hebrew. He is of Hebrew descent.
Well, he was a
You see what I'm
converso.
saying?
Caspar de
Yes,
Gama
precisely.
was
He is ancestrally of Hebrew descent or Israelite descent or Judean descent, however you want to call it. But he is not a Jew by practice. He's not a religious Jew. He is a religious Catholic. So he's no different from, let's say, a Lebanese Catholic or a Palestinian Catholic. You see what I'm saying? Or not really Palestinian, but like a Lebanese Catholic. You know what I mean?
But it's yeah, but it's saying that they were Sephardi, meaning they were Spanish Jews. That's different than Mizrahi Jews. Although it might
Yeah,
have
that's
some.
true. That's true. It's a different tradition, but at the same time, I actually, it's really amazing because I was looking at the Cochrane. Cochrane is about to come on the show with Greg Cochrane. Is about
I
to
don't
come on
know
the
who
show
he is,
with.
but I saw the advertisement
He's
on
a
the.
geneticist, I believe, among other things, biologist. But I've seen him put in the estimate of the genetic component within Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews. That's Levantine or Hebrew or whatever you want to call it. It can be as large as 60%, which really astonished me, because to think that a people who have been for over 2,000 years outside of the Levant have up to 60% of their overall genetic makeup be Levantine is just astonishing to me. How do you feel about numbers like that, David?
They're interesting. I've been, Yeshiva University has these courses on Jewish history, and I've been listening to them for like a year now, like hundreds of them, and they're very interesting. And I could probably trace. I know Jewish history. Like I think I could name like the leaders of the generation, largely from Moses till today, and say where the because I've been studying it for a long time. So when after the Roman expulsion, the major Jewish centers in Babylon and Syria and Pumbedita, and then about 1000 A.D. With the decline of Islam there, most of them end up moving to Spain with the Islamic conquest through North Africa, and until the Spanish expulsion, and then you have Ashkenazi Jews rising about the same time that Sephardi Jews are reaching Spain. So the original Sephardi Jews that come to Spain are your Mizrahi Jews. They are Iraqi Jews, a lot of them, and maybe they intermarry or they're North Africa, or however their lineage is slightly different than the Jews, like the Iranian Persian Jews, Bukharian Jews, Baghdadi Jews that remained in the Middle East the whole time and never. But your major people who brought Judaism around the world were your Sephardi Jews to America. The first Jews in America for like 200 years were Sephardi because they were part
in
of
both the New World, in both the South and the North, is what most people don't realize. This was in America.
I have a book of from South America. There were hundreds of synagogues across South America and the Caribbean, like Barbados, Jamaica, 400 years old. There were hundreds of synagogues all across there, and these were Sephardi. A lot of them were converted to Christianity. So if you follow the annals, Christopher Columbus, when he comes to America, that ship includes converted Jews. And a lot of times the converted Jews were like the scribes or translators. And that's why I say Caspar de Gama, when he goes there, there's Vasco da Gama.
Sorry, hold on one moment.
Has a translator. So I guess I'll keep on talking while you're doing what you're doing. But Vasco da Gama has a converted Jewish, Christian who became Catholic during the Inquisition, and he serves as a translator for Vasco da Gama. And they go to India, and these records are there. Like at Krishna, they find Hindus who are worshiping Krishna, and they think that they're followers of Christ, like the lost. Are you there, Rev 17? Like the who was that? Like the Christian kingdom. They thought they would find a lost Christian kingdom. Prester John, I think the Prester John kingdom. So they thought the Hindus that worshipped Krishnas were Prester John, but it was done through a Jewish translator. And then I think Caspar de Gama was actually a Jewish convert to. And then you have your America. So these big. But when Spain declines and Portugal declines, and you have the rise of Northern Europe, then you also have the rise of Ashkenazic Jewry, including in America. You have the Dutch East India Company. The Dutch East India Company is largely Sephardi Jews, even though it's centered in the Ashkenaz region of the Netherlands, but it was Sephardi Jews that had left Spain that were ethnically there, and it's all fascinating history. You know about Prester John, Rev 1417. Have ever heard about Prester John, who the Christian missionaries, when they went around the world, they thought they were going to find this like lost kingdom of a Christian missionary who ended up in like Asia and set up this Christian kingdom. And for like 1,000 years, kind of like the Jews, thought they'd find the 10 lost tribes. So when you found like the Jews of Kerala, maybe the Jews of Kerala were the lost tribes, but so the Christians thought they were going to find Prester John. Are you familiar with that legend?
No, I'm not familiar.
I've read the literature. It's all very interesting, and but you see the nature of the Jew. I have a book when they found the Jews of China, and they first went to Kaifeng, first like 800 years ago, and then there were multiple missions to Kaifeng. But it's interesting because like Nietzsche and Kant had wrote essays on the Jews of Kaifeng, whatever their opinion of Jews were. But so Nietzsche and Kant in Germany, who are dealing with Ashkenazic Jews, I think Immanuel Kant, had run-ins with Moshe Mendelssohn. Moshe Mendelssohn had been an essay writing contest, and he had defeated, like in the blood sports between in the days of the era, it had been Moshe Mendelssohn and Immanuel Kant, and there had been times where Moshe Mendelssohn had defeated Immanuel Kant, but Immanuel Kant had been curious about the Jews of Kaifeng, and so these debates that are happening today, really they've happened every generation. So it's very interesting, at least from the scholarly perspective. And,
also a lot of Baghdadi Jews and Syrian Jews were involved with the British Empire, not various companies and whatnot.
That becomes later.
Yeah, that comes later. That comes during the 1800s.
So I mean, you had your Sephardi Jews, and then you have your rise of the Netherlands, and then you have the famous Menashe ben Israel. And I was in Amsterdam, and I was in Rembrandt's house, and he has a picture of Menashe ben Israel, who was a Sephardi Jew whose parents had converted to Christianity. And then we got to Amsterdam, he goes back to being Jewish, and he writes these texts, and he's the one he was friends with Rembrandt. Rembrandt had illustrated a Bible, and he actually lived in the Jewish quarter. If any of you go to Amsterdam, you could check it out. But then this Menashe ben Israel goes to England, and he convinces Oliver Cromwell about 1650 to let the Jews back into England. And then when the Jews get back into England, they help set up the insurance markets and the futures markets. And then when Spain decreases, I think you have the famous like Spanish Armada in the miraculous defeat where Britain somehow defeats the incredible Spanish Armada in their poor economic decisions. So around 300 years ago, 400 years ago, you have the rise of the British Empire, and the British Empire uses global jewelry to that extent. So when they go into India, they team up with these Mizrahi Jews that are already there as business partners. And this history is actually very well documented.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this. I'm familiar with what you're talking about. I'm getting a message from Judah Star High, and he's saying that he can destroy you with the flick of his fingers because he had an epiphany or something like that.
He wants to destroy me? I mean, he wants to have a discourse, or saying he's just... I mean, basically everything
I can ask him to clarify. If he's in the chat, please clarify. All right.
I mean, basically everything I'm saying is pretty factual.
Yeah.
Like I could pull up my books from the shelf, or
yeah,
you
I could just
Wikipedia.
Just post the link in the chat.
I mean,
just post it. Right, can I just open the floodgates? I'm just opening the floodgates.
Yeah, I guess I don't mind.
Floodgates open.
I admit I'm kind of boring. Most people don't find this interesting, but
no. You're not kind of boring. That's not what it is at all. It's just that there are people in who want to address me, and we're gonna have a bunch of hours. So it's not like we aren't gonna have more opportunities to talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then saying, I don't know if anyone wants to listen to me give a history lesson. And
Well, I do, and I have a lot of other Mizrahi Jews who follow my channel who find this sort of stuff kind of interesting. So, I mean, I think it's good content.
yeah, I find it fascinating. That's why we were talking about what's the essential character of a Jew, that you could see these Jews across every nation. So, you might, in America, you might be used to dealing with a certain type Jew, but really there are Jews everywhere, and the same essential element of the Jewish character is the same everywhere. If you get someone on the stream, to give me a little break, I could go to my bookshelf and bring over some of these books. I have a nice book about synagogues in the Caribbean, and the Jews of India, the Jews of Bombay,
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
the Jews of China, the Jews of Japan. And although Poland was the nicest ever of any country in the history of the world to the Jews, relatively. I mean, you say America went for a certain.
I'd say India was. There was never one massacre against Jews in India that I can think of.
India has never persecuted their Jews, but Poland set up a system that was extremely nice to Jews, and that's why
Poland privileged their Jews.
Yeah, I think there was like
I would rather not be persecuted than be privileged most of the time and persecuted some of the time when that catches up to you because you're an exogenous group. I would rather have an India scenario than a Poland scenario, personally.
I mean, but till today, like 75% of Jews are of Polish origin, and before World War II, you made a
75.
Yeah, because you had like 15 million Polish Jews. If you look before the war, you had hundreds, thousands of Jewish towns all across. And they say like Berlin, or maybe not Berlin, Vienna, like was actually like 20% Jewish coming up to the war. But when you had close to 10 million Jews across like Greater Poland, which when Poland was the biggest empire in Europe, and they set up laws that were very favorable to Jews coming in, and that let Jews have their own little townships where you had the rise of Hasiduses, like Satmar and Belz and Bobov and all these places where you had these little towns of like tens of thousands of Hasidic Jews. And blood-wise, till today, the bulk of Jews, like how many Mizrahi Jews are there? How many Indian Jews are there? There are tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 Indian Jews. Even if there's a few 100,000 Iraqi Jews, hundreds of thousands of Moroccan, Tunisian Jews, there's millions of Jews of Polish origin. That's the vast majority of us, and it was because
that's interesting. See, I don't know that much about Ashkenazi Jews, really. In New York, the demographics skew a bit more mixed in terms of Jews. It's not just Polish Jews. There are a lot of German Jews, Lithuanian background Jews, Balkan background Jews, Sephardic Jews, Mizrahi Jews, like my family, who are English Jews also. And yeah.
If there's, let's say there's 1.5 million Jews in greater New York City, that includes maybe like Muncie and the New Jersey. If you look like in Brooklyn, you have like 500,000 Jews, probably like 400,000 of those are Polish, and a lot of the Russian Jews came from Poland. They were part of the when in like the 1600s they set up the system that was very favorable to Jews, and then Jews spread out into Russia and multiplied there. So most Jews, like Russian extraction, are also Polish by blood.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why they have Polishized surnames, but they're living in Russia. And that's true for even places like Sweden. Sweden has a lot of Jews who are from Poland. England has a lot of Jews who are from Poland, just like how England also has a lot of Sephardic Jews and Mizrahi Jews who ended up becoming, quote, English Jews, like my family, who became English Jews in the 1800s. Yeah,
so you were Polish Jews who moved to England.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's you could say like who cares, but I mean that's the lessons of history. And to me, it's interesting, and it has a factor on the movement of things till today. And
exactly, if you know how history works, you can analyze historical trends, and even if you're looking at it from a purely materialist, non-spiritual lens, you can I don't know.
And most
you
people,
you can just sort of predict things. You can use it to predict things in the future, and you can. It's just an interesting historical guiding light. You can learn from your past.
And you remember that Poland had been a dominant power in Europe like 300-400 years ago. There had been an era where Poland was the dominant power that controlled maybe even a majority of the territory of mainland Europe.
I just wanted to come in real quick and chill Rodney's debate with David tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern. There will be blood.
If you guys want to talk, that's it. He's entered and left.
Thanks,
are you here,
Brindle?
Are you here, Glib?
Brindle, listen. All right, here, hold on. Some people are making comments. All right. Someone says, Polish by blood, Ashkenazim are Europeans. And then someone earlier was saying Khazar theory. There is not a single study that's been done that shows anything but a very substantial amount of Levantine genetic material found in Ashkenazi Jews that's congruous with the Levantine genetic material found in Sephardic Jews and Mizrahi Jews and 3,000-year-old Levantine skeletons, which belong to either Canaanites or Phoenicians or whoever, or ancient Israelites or whoever it may be. The point is, Ashkenazi Jews, are they European? Are they not European? I mean, that's subjective. Does it really matter? Are Gypsies European? Is like a half black person European? Is a Castizo who moves back to Spain European? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's subjective. To me, I would say no, because as someone who's of, first of all, someone who's of mixed Ashkenazi Mizrahi ancestry, but mostly Mizrahi ancestry, I guess the way that I see it is like, I view us as a congruous people. You know, there's more in common with my, albeit Ashkenazified and westernized Mizrahi family in New York than there is with Ashkenazi Jews in New York, let's say, or Ashkenazi Jews in Tel Aviv than there is with any of us with, let's say, Iraqi Arabs in Baghdad. You know, it's
Well, I mean, the most likely, whether the Khazar affair, what the origin of the first Polish Jews were, logically, you historically say that Poland just set up such a place that was so welcoming and favorable to Jews that the population multiplied. And if you had hundreds of thousands of Jews that moved into Poland from different places, France, Germany, Spain, wherever they came from, if there were, maybe some of them were Khazars, but that blossomed into millions, upwards of maybe more than 10 million Jews over a few hundred years, just because conditions were so favorable. Mm-hmm. Maybe here in America, Jewish populations stay the same, but if you look at the increase of Haredim in Brooklyn or something like that, after the war, but the population of ultra-Orthodox Jews is really blossoming here in New York due to such favorable conditions, such as welfare, Section 8, the protections America offers, letting us speak Yiddish and live our religion, or all the business commerce activity that New York City offers, that the population of Hasidim, now there's like 500,000 Hasidim, maybe not 500,000, but it might be close to 500,000 Hasidim in greater New York.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting the way that the rapid population grows, and this is probably something that Cochrane is going to talk about, because this is one of the things that he studies and talks about in his paper that he released with Harpening and Hardy. By the way, I mislabeled him. I said that he was a geneticist. That is incorrect. He is an anthropologist and a biologist, according to Rev 14, I believe. And what else was I saying? Basically believing in science, or not believing in science, rather. Believing in science. But if you take modern genetics seriously, then you don't take Khazar theory seriously. Basically, if you think that anthropology and genetics, if you take it seriously, Khazar theory has very little evidence, at least insofar as the theory says that any substantial Jewish group makes up a bulk of its ancestry derives from a Turkic or Khazarian population. People are talking about, hold on one sec. I mean, yeah, there may be like a little bit of Tatar influx in Jews, or some other, like there may be some component that's not Levantine or European.
But it
isn't like a majority component.
You had Jews in all of these places. You had thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. It's just a special condition in Poland that allows there to grow to be millions and millions of us. So obviously you had Jews in the steppes and the Tatars in Russia, in India and China and places of Africa, coming to America and all these places. But you have this bulk of millions of us growing in Central Europe and Poland due to these enormously favorable conditions that was around for maybe 200 years.
Yeah.
Years. Even like Iran, because you are always under that. There was never a time where Iranian Jewry like blossomed to more than 1 million. I don't think you ever, you had a few 100,000, but you never had like 1 million Jews. I don't like anywhere outside of Europe, Ashkenaz.
Would you like to sing a song with? Well, okay, yeah, you're right. And I mean, I'm not sure what caused the explosive growth of Ashkenazi Jews.
Well, I just told you the favorable conditions offered by the Polish Empire.
No. I mean, that's your theory, but the point is that's not conclusive. There's no completely conclusive evidence as to what's caused this. There are other theories that I've seen as well, talked about this, and actually, I'm going to ask Luke to potentially ask Cochrane when he has Cochrane on the show.
You want to sing a song? You got Judas.
Yeah, I'd like to get Travis Hunt on the chat to sing a song. If you're there, just take the link, and you can join and sing a song with Judas if you're interested, or you can just join the panel and sit back and relax. I'm not going to pressure you like Luke. I'm doing the relaxed, cozy stream. Hold on. Does this link work?
Anyone talking? Is anyone else here?
Yeah, Judas is here, and Levi's here, and Negation is here. Welcome.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself a few minutes so I could eat my blackberries.
Please go ahead. So, Levi and Negation, what is on your minds tonight?
What were you guys just talking about, Cochrane?
We were talking about the Ashkenazi Jews, the origin of Ashkenazi Jews, whether they're European or not. They had a population boom, etc. Just little things like that. Really.
Yeah, all I know about it is that they initially, when they came, I think it was mostly men, came from the Levant, and then they interbred for might have been like a few hundred years. It was like multiple generations that they interbred with Europeans, but then after that, they went through a long period of zero interbreeding, and then they eventually formed into like their own distinct ethnic group. That's all I really know about it.
I mean, yeah, they're a hybrid group as described by Razib Khan, as put it in Discover Mag. He basically described Ashkenazi Jews as a hybrid group between Europeans and Levantines, or Bronze Age Levantines, and that seems to hold water with just about every genetic study that I've seen on Ashkenazi Jews, including Aaron al-Hayek's, which is oft cited as the big proving of the Khazar theory. Negation F, it doesn't seem like your microphone is working for whatever reason. I'm not. Sometimes Google Hangouts is iffy with that. You can go to the settings button, which I think looks like a wrench or a cog or something. Judas, you wanted to come here to Blood Sports Duvid. You can talk to him when he gets back, I reckon. Hello. Shalom. All right. Never mind. Let's see. Give me one moment. Someone's saying get Patrick Little in the chat. People are like saying get Patrick Little. Yeah. How do I I said I want Travis to come on, and then someone in the chat was like I should hit this blunt for my nigga Travis. No, someone's saying they're pressing 2 to get Patrick Little on. Sorry, I'm saying cozy too much. I started that with like Millennial Woes and Adam Wallace. So, well, I didn't really start it, but let's see. Censored candidate on Twitter. I can't get him, but if anyone else, I have my phone down here, but I can't pull it up because it's charging. You see, it's plugged in. But if anyone can get Patrick on, just bring him on. Just you guys get him on, because like no one's gonna listen to me if I'm just some like random Jew saying Patrick Little, come on, like I'm just some random Jew, and I can't even really log into Gab right now because I'm on the stream. But yeah, I'd have no problem talking to Patrick Little. I mean, I don't really want to get into like a confrontation with him. There's no need, but there's no need. No, I mean, I guess the thing here's how I feel about Patrick Little is like he gets facts or sort of like little vibes of things incorrect, but the general gist of what he's saying is correct, at least insofar as it applies to Westerners and Europeans and people of European descent. So it's like and then he sort of extrapolates out from there onto other groups and onto all of Jewish history, basically. But I can see where he's coming from, and arguing with him would be like swimming upstream. I'd agree with 5 things he'd say and then disagree with 1 or 2. It's like, what's the point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like B-rate scholarship, and I discussed that in Brundlefly's stream last night. If no one's talking, can I show up some of my books?
Yeah, go for it. Judas wanted to challenge you.
Can I show up some of my books first?
Sure, go ahead, please.
So, actually, a lot of these books are kind of expensive. Also, this is Spanish and Portuguese Jews of the Caribbean, and you could see a map, and these are different places where Jews had synagogues going back 400 years, to Manhattan. It's very interesting. You had like the sands, if you're familiar with like the sand synagogues, like Barbados and Jamaica and the Virgin Islands, they used to have sand on the floor of the synagogue. So it's pretty interesting. Here's the Jews of Andhra Pradesh, part of India. Here's Hebrewism of West Africa.
Oh my!
The Jews and the Japanese. It's interesting. We have a long history going back with the Japanese also. Here's
the Jew fears the samurai.
Well, not necessarily. I'm saying like we're merchants. I mean, that's like I'm the happy merchant. So I'm saying like that's what we do. We were involved with the Japanese going back. Here's the Mandarin and the Chinese. And missionaries, including like Jesuits. I have a book. I didn't bring it out, from a Chinese diplomat that has more history. Since you said from London, here's the synagogues of London. The synagogues in London going
probably
back
a lot around Golders Green.
Well, today, but I'm saying there, like in Oxford, there were synagogues in England going back 1,000 years.
Manchester as well.
In the first expulsion, they claim like some of the at some point, like 1,000 years ago, the Jews had become so wealthy, money lending, they had more money than the king, and that's what led to some of the expulsions. There were actually multiple expulsions of Jews before 1290, when there was like a close to 400-year period where Jews were expelled. But yeah, we were in London going back like 1,000 years. These books are kind of expensive, but they're very good. Here's Western Jews in India. And, these are more like your Ashkenazic, your European refugees that go there, and included like your...
And Sephardic Jews, it seems.
Yeah, you had like Bollywood actors and a lot of interesting things. And here you have... just the Jews of Bombay, and this was largely the Sassoon family because they became so wealthy. They were knighted by the British Crown, and they have lots of buildings. They say Gandhi, when he was sick, recovered in Sassoon Hospital. Every Indian person knows probably Sassoon. And really, I have many more books. This one I brought it. Aleppo in Syria.
Haleb, yes, of course.
Yeah, so till today, there's not many Jews in Aleppo, but Aleppo...
There was a riot there, a major one in the 1900s.
Aleppo, the Syrian Jews, it goes back to biblical times. Till like 100 years ago, there was like a 3,000-year continuous community in Syria. So there's a lot to just Jewish history, besides like what the sages say in the Talmud and the rabbis and the leaders. But I could go for hours just like doing show and tell with my books. And if I had to, sometimes I go to events, like I used to do like the Hare Krishnas. I would set up and do book distribution. I'd bring like bags of books, and this was just pure Hindu stuff, not even Judaism. And I'd set my books up while the Hare Krishnas chanted. And like I'd like to do that for Jews. Sometimes I like go to the synagogue and I'll bring a bunch of books and put them on display, just to show how much wisdom there is, how much there is to study, how much there is to it. But I'm going to put my books back. I'm going to mute myself so someone else could say some stuff.
Yeah, I find it quite interesting. I'd like to read all of those books because I've read several books on those topics already. More of a Middle Eastern focus, Ottoman focus, but I'm very interested in the history of Jews in the Ottoman Empire. In fact, I even took a course at a local university in Manhattan on the history of Jews in the Ottoman Empire. It was a fascinating course. Small class size, but that made it even better. Let's see. Judah Star High. Do you have an accusation against Duvid?
I think Duvid's a lovely person.
All right. Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to say otherwise. Are you ready to go when Duvid gets back, so you don't get like all autiste and not mute the mic, or like mute the mic?
Where are you going to blood sport about?
Well, you came in here saying that you could destroy him with a flick of your finger. I mean, I assumed you wanted to come in here.
That's on record now. I could, but I think it has to happen like in a happenstance way, you know?
I was not a history major. Well, I'm studying art history and physical anthropology and a few other things. Yeah, Judah Star High. You had some things you wanted to say to Duvid though earlier. What were those things? Just go ahead. You can go ahead for a moment. I'm going to grab another kombucha.
He goes to like ashrams, and the garlands aren't sneeze. Even though I'm impressed that he knows how to make them.
You're arguing from a pure halakha ground. You want to argue from a basis of binding halakha, whether what I'm doing is forbidden or not?
Sir, an ashram is equivalent to a church.
Well, I mean,
you guys should translate as you go, because most people don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah, an ashram is that's what Duvid's going to and making those lay type things for. Duvid's involved with Hare Krishnas and other types of subcontinental religions.
You want to have some Jewish halakhic blood sports where Judas is just coming at me. I'm a bad Jew. I'm violating halakha.
I didn't say you're a bad Jew. I'm saying like
no, this is not me. This was Judas who was asking me to bring him on. I'm just letting Judas come on because I think that everyone should be platformed on the Babylonian Hebrew channel because I support peace and love.
Well, I'm just asking Judas what he wants. You want to have a halakhic argument of Jewish blood sports.
Dude. I don't need to have a halakhic argument. Just go ask any Orthodox rabbi if it's permitted to enter an ashram, you know? Dude, this information is readily available. You just need to go to the places where it can be found.
Yeah,
you know?
I have my rabbis. I've obviously spoken to my rabbis. I'm saying there's a lot of different Orthodox rabbis. There's the vast opinion. So, I mean,
you know what? I'm going to do the base thing and just disbar them.
Yeah, I'm saying, but you're just talking nonsense, and so you're not intellectually honest.
I don't know. My rabbis I go to are very, very, very mainstream.
And your rabbis told you it's absolutely forbidden to enter an ashram.
Yeah.
You're saying that you asked them and they said it's absolutely forbidden to enter ashram.
I know for a fact. I don't need to ask them because Hinduism, Hare Krishna is like
you don't need to ask them.
It's an idolatrous god, dude.
Yeah, but saying it's forbidden to enter them. Can you enter their social hall? Can you enter their kitchen?
Everyone in the stream, go research this.
Yeah, but saying you don't know what you're talking about. You're just talking nonsense. I mean, you know, God forbid, you're talking out of your ass. You didn't even ask.
I'm telling everyone, go do your independent research. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, because I mean, you just admit you don't know what you're talking about. If you want to talk like the halakha, you know, it says Talmud Chacham.
I am not halachist, and I'm not qualified to speak on these things. I just know that.
Hey, can you guys give a little background on what you're talking about here? Because I'm actually
telling him.
Too.
I'm telling him that
I'm part Hindu. I mean, saying Levi, I'm part Hindu. I'm part of the Hare Krishnas. I go to Hindu. I interfaith. I go to churches and mosques also. But like, I'm actively participatory in Hindu stuff. And he's attacking me from.
So Judas is mad that you're affiliated with the Hindus and Jewish at the same time.
As an Orthodox Jew, I should be forbidden from doing it. Or if I am doing it, then I'm not really an Orthodox Jew. Like I'm a hypocritical, fake, false Jew. Like
I didn't say that. I never said any of that. Do not put words in my mouth. All I said is that you should just mend your ways and stop going.
Well, it looks like everyone got cut. But
yo, everyone just got kicked. I think Judah Star High is becoming less autistic. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I could explain this now since I guess I'm on. So I mean, if you want to if you look of it and you say, I subscribe to Jewish law, I try to live according to Jewish law, and then the question is, what am I doing? Is it in accordance to Jewish law or not? And maybe like Levi or something like that, he could be like, I don't care whether it's he doesn't care whether it's in accordance with Jewish law or not. So it's like you can't go. Just like not driving on Sabbath, God forbid, or like eating pork or shellfish.
Luke is what's called orthoprax, and he's like a moralist too. But we all know that.
What's orthopras? What's orthopras?
Oh, it's like people who don't. This is actually really big in New York. It's growing in LA. Orthopraxy is people who practice Orthodox, at least in public, but they don't believe in like things like the Torah is the word of God and like God itself and these kinds of things. But women, like these types of women there's fewer women who do this, but they are very good at hiding. So the way I do it is that I just tell them stuff like, Grandmaster Rabbi Rav Chaim Kanievsky has superpowers, or like the Chafetz Chaim did miracles, and like this is just like mainstream. It's kind of crazy.
Let me give you some pilpul here. Just pay attention for a second and listen to some real Talmudic pilpul. And you're familiar with this one? It says Talmud Chacham Mater Amoritz Aser. You heard that one?
Listen, buddy, like you probably learned a lot more than me, so that kind of makes you a little bit more dangerous.
No, dude, this is good. This is a good chance to show.
You want to learn something or not?
This is good to learn off.
You're here to attack me, even though you don't have grounds to attack me.
I want to learn something.
So I mean, it says multiple places in the Talmud. Talmud Chacham, meaning someone who has learned, a wise man of the Talmud, is lenient, as we're an Amoritz, someone, an ignoramus who doesn't know. A non-scholar has to be stringent, so you have to know what's truly forbidden and what's allowed. So it's like when you're a little kid and they tell you you can't eat in Johnny's house because it's not kosher, it's treif. And you say like, well, could you go into Johnny's house and can you have a cup of water? Can you have an apple in his house? And you say because the kid isn't smart enough to know what he's allowed to eat and what he's not allowed to eat. And even can you go into McDonald's and find something kosher? It's like, yeah, there's kosher things everywhere, but you say Amoritz, ignoramus just has to say it's forbidden. It's absolutely forbidden. But you say if you know what's actually forbidden, you could be more lenient. Yeah, you could go into Johnny's house and you could have a cup of water, you could have a cup of juice, you could have an apple or the the different type things. So he's saying, okay, can you go into an ashram? And saying, well, an Amoritz and ignoramus, you're saying it's absolutely forbidden to go into an ashram. But a Talmud Chacham could be.
Sorry, dude. Can I just cut in real quick? I just have a question. So, is this a restriction on Orthodox Jews or on all Jews? Because my mom is fully Jewish, but she's also a Buddhist.
Well, I'm talking if she accepts the weight of Jewish law. If your mother wanted to comply with Jewish law, so your mother could just, I don't care what the Jewish law is, I'm going to do what I want anyways, and she's still Jewish.
Yeah.
Okay. But she might care a little bit. I mean, like, God forbid, does she eat shellfish? Does she eat pork? Or she's like, yeah, I'm a Jew. I'm not going to eat shellfish. I'm not going to eat pork because, like,
actually, she doesn't eat pork, but for reasons completely unrelated to Judaism.
So I'm trying to, because
coincidentally,
someone like Judas, who in theory believes that there is a Shem who commanded us in the Jewish law.
110%.
It's not just being ethnically Jewish, but there is a God that cares whether we keep our specific ritualistic Jewish law called the halacha. Halacha is basically like dharma. It means the way. It means the path. And so within that framework, that to say like, okay, Levi, you're a Jew, you can't drive on Sabbath. You have to do all this stuff. You got to start keeping kosher. You got to start putting on tefillin, daven every day, and keep the Jewish law. And you'd be like, no, I do not want to do that. I don't even think God cares whether I do it. Like I like my Judaism, I like Israel, I like ethnically, but like I don't even think God cares whether I do that stuff. So it's the frame that you're looking in it. So if two Orthodox Jews, so to say, who think that we have the weight of halacha upon us, and then we're trying to decipher, can we do this or can we not, based on the Bible and based on the sages. So it's a different framework.
This really applies to practitioners of the Orthodox tradition.
Well,
Right,
it
so
applies
just
to
common-
believers.
Right.
Yeah, so in orthodoxy, that like if Judas could like prove to me that it goes against halakha to go to the ashram, like I'm either
Do
like
it. I have a theory.
so
and it's
I'm saying
really
I'm
heartbreaking.
saying that the halakha doesn't allows me to do what I'm doing. I'm not violating any Jewish law. In fact, I'm fulfilling Jewish law. There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. But if he could show me that I'm not allowed to do what I'm doing, I would either have to change my ways or I'm no longer an Orthodox Jew.
What it is. Sorry, this is really hard for me. 'Cause, like,
I have
see
one last question.
I wanna say
Isn't
something.
Are you
sorry to
crying?
interrupt one last time? Isn't it kind of
Is this
like
guy crying? We got to sing a song to cheer
Isn't
him
it-
up. I think he's crying.
like isn't trying to get around like all these restrictions sort of in
No,
a sense
what it
already
is-
like a betrayal, or you know what I mean,
No,
like
what it
using
is that
technicalities? Sorry.
Judaism
Well,
is
it's
too
like
hard
you
for Duvid.
I mean, if you're trying to get around it, you're just like, okay, like, can you find me a way to do what I want to do within the bounds of Jewish law?
Right. Is that not what you're doing here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two things: whether I'm trying to get away with something, or whether I'm saying he's fundamentally mistaken. I'm not just trying to get away with something; I'm actually in proper line. And you know, not only my rabbis didn't give me an exception to do it, my rabbi said I should do it. And you know, if,
No,
if,
David,
if you're
what it
looking
is,
at it,
I
where
I-
eventually
I want to
says
say
that
something.
you can't do it.
No,
you have
this
to
is
make
really
the
hard for me
decision.
because
It's between being an Orthodox Jew and following the sages or doing what you want to do. And eventually the person, it's like, okay, like if you had a shiksa girlfriend or something and you went, Rabbi, can I marry my shiksa girlfriend? And the rabbi's like, no, under no exception can you do it. And you're just like, F you, Rabbi, I'm marrying the shiksa. I don't care about Jewish law. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I
I do.
certainly do. I mean, I think that you're making assumptions about what someone like Levi might think. Maybe Levi does think, I do have the weight of halacha on me, and I.
Well, you might
am
have
Jew.
some care
But-
in the, to a certain level, like Reform Jews or something like that. Might they're Reform, but they still have some barents of Jewish tradition, and but within the frame of Judas, it's looking like like no, I mean you're going to go to hell. Like God might strike you down tomorrow if you're not in
So
accordance.
I'm going to go to hell? Oh shit.
Well, I'm saying from the opinion of the of the Orthodox Jew, and saying, okay, like I can't force you to keep the halakha. Like we're in a secular country, and we.
So if I don't grow out chaos, then I'm going to go to hell, is what you're saying?
Well, that's what I said. I'm not your judge. Hashem will be your judge. But according to what the sages say, yeah, maybe there's some way to judge you favorably. And Hashem, you're a hidden righteous person. You have good reason to do what you're doing. But you like generally you're not in line with the Jewish law. God forbid, you're probably going to hell. And you say, well, I don't believe in heaven or hell or whatever. You think, okay, but I'm a good person, and that outweighs it. Like, do you think because you keep kosher and keep Shabbos?
So David, what about like an absolute bastard that follows halakha versus a regular guy who does not, who has a better chance of getting into heaven and hell?
Hashem is the judge. I'm saying I could tell you what the sages say in the books, but I'm saying, yeah, Hashem's the judge.
So you're saying it's more valuable to follow halakha than just to have a generally good moral compass.
No, I mean being a good,
like you could be a complete bastard, but as long as you follow the right rules.
I mean, bastard just refers to your lineage. But you mean like a bad.
Well, you know what I mean.
It's a
common expression, but yeah.
But I'm saying bastard just means you have bad lineage.
All right, piece of shit. How does that work?
Yeah, however you say it. But yeah, I'm saying being a bad person is against the halakha. You can't make fun of people and beat up on weaklings and steal and cheat people in business. That's against the halakha.
So okay, let me get this straight. So you're saying someone who follows halakha in the purest way possible is guaranteed to be
morality. He's saying
it's guaranteed to be a good person. So what you're saying. So the closer you are to halakha, the better person you are.
Halakha
do you feel like there's sufficient reason to believe that?
Everything, not just the rituals, but how you treat your fellow man.
So do you think that on average Jews who follow the religion more piously are better people than those who don't?
Not necessarily. And it's saying Hashem's the judge, not me. And it could be, a person could, God forbid, not keep the kosher laws, not keep any of the holidays, not do any of the rituals, but they're a really nice, good person. And then there's a person who keeps all the rituals, and not even that they're a scumbag, but they're just not such a good person. But Hashem will be like, being a good person is more important than the rituals. That's possible. It says, I'm not the judge, Hashem is. But within the bounds of a believer, you should want to do it all. So I mean, it's not just like, oh, because I'm a good person that you don't have to do the rituals. You say, no, I mean, you have to do the rituals too. Being a good person doesn't mean you don't have to keep all the rituals.
I see. Just to quickly intervene. Welcome back, Negation F. And it seems like Judas has broken into tears. Just seems like Judas is Negation. Your microphone's working.
Tears of joy.
Yeah, because I feel bad for people like Duvid because they're attached to their lifestyle and like it's like they're security, but like, I don't want to take it away from them. But like there were Nazis who. Oh my gosh, dude! It's too much.
Get a hold of yourself, and we'll sing "Dror Yikra Living."
That's my favorite song.
You gotta sing a song, Tears of Joy.
No, if I start singing, Analytical Chick will make fun of me again for being tone deaf.
Listen. What is making you cry? What is the point of these tears?
First of all, I soiled my garments. Isaiah chapter 63. And
yeah, Isaiah chapter 6. All right, continue.
No.
Smoke weed
I feel
every
bad
day.
for you because Judaism is really hard. So, okay, the picture like.
What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on?
Nothing. Don't mind.
Some random dude who joined in.
What the fuck?
No. I'm gonna end soon. Let me finish my food and have my cigarette.
Davey Goldstein, some random dude joined in. I don't know if it was a troll or whatever. Okay, yeah, someone else has to carry it for a while so I can eat my blackberry.
Oh shit!
All right, no, Judas, you are going to deliver a monologue. Why are you crying for Duvid? Explain. Judas, why are you crying for Duvid?
Because, dude, no, I legitimately feel bad. And, like, a lot of times I'll, like, start crying over, like one time I work at a certain place.
That's not answering my question. Why are you crying for Duvid?
Because he's so attached to his lifestyle that I feel like him separate. He has, like, this emotional, like, attachment to it. And like, it's, like, he will, like, it will, like, really mess up his quality of life if he doesn't go to ashram, you know?
All right, so you're crying for him because he's going to an ashram. All right, brilliant.
Oh, I'm crying for him because he's not able to break free from him because
this is
of
really
some
difficult for people to
Smoke weed
understand.
every day.
I'm a half Jew. The halakha, a Jewish law, applies differently to me than it does to different people. Because I'm a half Jew, the law actually applies differently than it would.
Hey, can we hold on? Can we get some input from Levi Goldstein?
Duvid, that's bullshit.
Wait, Duvid.
No, I just want to hear. Hey, I want to hear from Levi Goldstein if possible.
I don't know if it's just
Sorry,
a troll.
I muted him because he was talking over some people. Yeah, I mean it is a troll, but if he has anything interesting today, he can go ahead and speak. Just unmute yourself, Levi.
Yeah, I'm saying like
All right,
Judas
I guess
is
Levi
just
doesn't
like
have
a
anything to say.
rabbi
Go
wannabe. He just wants to preach even though he hasn't read the books. He doesn't know the law.
I'm crying for you, Duvid.
Well, you should cry for yourself.
I see your struggle. I see your struggle, and like,
I appreciate your
like it
compassion.
just
I'm saying you want to give
places
over.
like Riverside, California. Like, there's nothing in Riverside, California, other than like an IHOP, you know. But like, there's Jews there, and probably some Jews autistic for Judaism, like me. But maybe they don't live near a shul, so like Shabbat will be hell, you know. 3 a.m. Yom Tov will be hell. It's really hard for me to deal with thinking about these things, you know.
Shit.
Hello?
Yeah.
I mean, I just muted myself because I'm eating blackberries. If someone else wants to talk,
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Judas has
let's
to
see.
pull himself together.
Yeah,
He's
Judas, pull
unintelligible.
yourself together, lad. All right. Hold on one sec. Oh, great. My phone just stopped.
Guys, G2D, Please forgive me if I embarrassed you or made you feel bad.
I forgive you, no problem. Just, I prefer you to be intelligible and talk clearly.
I understand. You're right. All right, guys. See you later. Bye.
Wait, no. All right. All right. It's been a pleasure,
Okay.
Judah Star. Hi. All right. Brilliant. So those cherries look delicious. Anyway, Levi, what's been on your mind tonight? It's good to have you on the show, as well as you, Negation F. What's been cracking with you? You've been trying to get on the stream for a while. Finally, now we're crossing paths.
Oh, is that to me?
Go ahead,
right?
Negation.
Or
Yeah, go ahead.
Both of you. I'm just saying, hey, what's up? What's on your minds?
Yeah, I was trying to get on the stream earlier, but I guess it turns out I had muted my mic, but not on the screen up here. I had muted it down on the keyboard, so that was kind of embarrassing, but stuff happens. But right, anything on my mind specifically? Well, I was kind of hoping Duvid would delve into that, how the law applies to him as a half Jew, but he's eating blackberries now, so might have to wait a minute.
Also, there's the maternal and paternal factor, but then again, I think that Brundle also wants to hear about half Jew law. He's interested for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean.
So what about someone who is on the paternal side of Hebrew descent, and what about someone who is on the maternal side of Hebrew descent? And these are both things that you can go into, Duvid, once you're done eating your cherries. But take all the time you need, but just let that mull around in your head and get your thoughts ready. And Levi, what's been up with you lately?
Oh yeah, just to comment on the paternal versus maternal lineage thing. I think, at least personally, like I know according to the law, the Jewish law, it's you honor the maternal side, but I think
from a Hebrew perspective, it doesn't matter.
It shouldn't matter, or if it did matter, I would say that it's better. You're better off going by the father because, well, for one, the kid takes the father's last name, which I guess it's not that important, but there's also, I feel like you have better control over the quality of the offspring if you leave it up to the father versus the mother.
Interesting. Some say that the Jews used to have paternal descent laws. I'm not sure if this is true or isn't. Also, let's see. What was I? Are you ready? Yeah, Duvid, please hop in. Respond to both of them.
Years of study for this, and most Jews are so commonly opinionated on this. Like it'd be like Judas, like they cry or attack me or just reject what I have to say. But it's extremely complicated because generally people look at it like, okay, if your mother's a Jew and your father's a non-Jew, you're 100% Jewish. And if your father's a Jew and your mother's a non-Jew, you're 0% Jewish, according to Jewish law. That's the generic religious understanding. And then obviously we have Reform in America that came up with patrilineal descent, and to say you're Jewish from your mother or your father. But that's, not in accordance with Jewish law. In Israel, they'll recognize it for like the right to return, but they won't recognize it for religion. So if your father is a Jew and your mother's not, you could still make the right to return to Israel and join the IDF, but you can't get married and you're not actually considered a Jew because the Orthodox rabbis.
Well, hold on. You can get married. I think you could get married if you're a guy in this situation, because if your wife is a full Jew, then it is technically like ordained.
Well, I'm saying these things are very controversial according to Israeli law. I'm saying you have.
What's funny about that too is that like there are like full-blooded Ethiopians that get the full status of like Jews in Israel, but there's half Russian, half Jews who are Jewish on their father's side that still don't get legal recognition as Jews. So it's just funny that the state would apply that standard
in Israel. So I mean, like the Russian Jews, like a million Russian Jews came, and they're full Israelis. They serve in the army. They have the government benefits, but they're not actually considered Jews because that's up to the Orthodox rabbis who control marriage law.
Yeah. Don't you think that going forward, though, it's a better idea to use like blood versus like just religious?
Well, unlikely,
like
because
according to the religious law,
it's unlikely anything's going to get rid of the Orthodox foothold in Israel, and likely the Orthodox control is only going to increase in Israel.
Well, it's like, well, I mean, this is taking it to an extreme, but say like, 10 generations ago, you had like a Jewish mother, and it just happened to be that every single generation it was the mother that, the mother had a daughter, and so on and so forth. So it was, that whatever 2 to the 10th, 1 over 2 to the 10th power.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so these things are complicated. I guess.
Okay.
I mean, did you want to say something, Negation, or you want me to?
No,
continue?
I'm sorry. You can continue. It just seems like a bunch of people got dropped. That's all.
So I'm saying because this applies to people. So you're like, okay, in America, you have, I don't know people's connections. People sometimes get dropped or
Hey,
Babs
take off the call or something.
going on a cell phone and dropped. So I mean, intrinsically, when you talk about it,
wait, actually, dude, let me just finish this one point real quick. I'm not sure how much of it you caught, but I was saying that, like, say that 10 generations ago you had a Jewish mom, and it was carried down through the mother each generation. So like you were a tiny fraction Jewish, and just by some technicality, you were Jewish according to the law, versus like someone who just has a Jewish dad and a non-Jewish mom. Like the person with that tiny percentage would be more Jewish according to the law. Doesn't that just seem weird?
No, I mean, because usually the rabbi would say, like, after 2 or 3 generations, if it's lost, you have to go through conversion, and then you have the complications of being actually a bastard, of having to obey the, for example, when the Ethiopians came to America, some of the rabbis held that they had to convert, and it was actually a benefit to them.
You mean Israel?
America?
Well, Israel, I think you meant. Right?
According to Jewish law,
you said America.
Yeah, I mean to Israel. But according to Jewish law, there's what's called the mamzer, the bastard, which is a Jew who comes from the product of forbidden relationships, and they're never allowed to remarry into the Jewish people, and that's a big problem in Israel also.
What do you mean by forbidden relationships? Give an example of a situation that would lead rise to a mamzer.
Well, this is where it starts becoming complicated, because usually that's like adultery. It's just straight like adultery. So if a person comes from an adulterous relationship, they're a bastard, and they're never allowed to return and marry into the Jewish people. Rabbi Akiva says that a non-Jewish man who has relationships with a Jewish woman, the kid is a bastard.
I love Israel. I love my flag. It's my flag. It's I step on it and shove it around this piece of garbage. Get that flag.
Awesome.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, David. You were saying?
What the fuck?
David, you were saying? No, it's just that I opened the stream in the chat. Yeah, David, go ahead.
Rabbi Akiva says that that a half Jew is a mamzer. Like that according to Rabbi Akiva, I'm a bastard, and I'm forbidden from ever remarrying into the Jewish people. Although classically, today most Orthodox Jews, most Jews would just say, if your mother's a Jew and your father's a non-Jew, you're 100% Jewish. But it's saying that was a dispute in Talmudic times, and hence comes the half Jew laws where halacha applies differently. And then you have the conflicting, like Levi was saying, what about being a good person? What about if there's a conflict between doing the ritual and being a good person, and you have the obligation to honor your father? So the question is, okay, I'm a half Jew, but I have an obligation to honor my father who's not Jewish. And what does the honor of my father imply? Usually honor of your father implies following in his ways. And actually the biblical commandment that says not to intermarry specifically says don't take your son, don't take your daughter to the son of a non-Jew, or your son to the daughter of because they'll follow in their ways. And but I already have a non-Jewish father, and I have that's the 5th commandment. It's one of the most important of all the commandments, is honoring your father and mother. And most of the sages say honoring your father and mother includes following in their ways. So, that could be certain things that would be forbidden for a full-blooded Jew. For me, is actually a mitzvah. It's a commandment, because by doing it, I'm actually honoring my father, as opposed to like a full-blooded Jew that would just be like, you're a sin. That's a sin. It's completely forbidden for you to do it. But Duvid, because he's following in the path of his father, it's actually a mitzvah.
Does that answer your question, Levi or Brundlefly? Would you like to address or Negation F rather? Would you like to address Brundlefly personally about his circumstance? I believe his his wife's father is of paternal descent.
So I mean, yeah, according to Israel, according to Orthodoxy, Brundlefly's wife is 100% non-Jew. She might have some Hebraic blood in her, but she's.
I think I think she converted though, or her father had her go through like a
reform conversion or something like that. I mean, she had.
Okay, so if it's reform, it's not technically valid.
Well, it's not. That's why these discussions are intrinsically very difficult. It's like the ethno-state thing. It's like Richard Spencer, and we're going to make the ethno-state. And the reality is, we have Judaism and we have Zionism. We already did make the ethno-state. And you think like, okay, for all your alt-right who want an ethno-state, look what Israel's going through. And just say, I'm sorry, Brundle, your wife is a 0% Jew. Your kid is a 0% Jew.
Well, actually, no. Dude, according to Israeli law, they would both be eligible. Both his wife and his son would be eligible
right
for citizenship there. It's only, it's just you have to have a quarter or more.
You don't have to be a Jew to be an Israeli.
That's
true. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, the concept of the Israeli state is based primarily upon the idea of Hebrew repatriation, more so than it is upon the idea of a formation of a Jewish state in the sense of any sort of theocratic state.
Israel was built on Nazi blood money. Like in the beginning, like in the first few years of Israel, like I think there were certain years where 90% of Israel's budget was
the Havara Agreement. You mean?
Well, I'm saying in the beginning, before the war, when the IDF and the early armed forces that overthrew the British and the Arabs came from the Nazis before the Holocaust, and then after the Holocaust, the reparations for like decades, reparations made up a majority of Israel's early budget. So I mean, I don't know if Brundlefly's saying like a Holocaust survivor, Ashkenazic Jew, you're saying because of all the factors of the Holocaust connected to the state of Israel. So he's saying if you have Jewish blood, even though you're not according to Jewish law Jewish, but because of that, you're the theory of a safe haven for people, and that the theory was if you're Jewish enough that the Nazis would have killed you, you're Jewish enough to be an Israeli citizen. So I mean, there's the complicated factors. Then you're talking about this is real life, this is real people, and so you have millions of people in the situation like Brundlefly's wife and Brundlefly's kids and like me. So you're just going to flat out, like in America, you have 6 million Jews and you have a few million half Jews, and you have like hundreds of thousands or millions of Jews that have patrilineal descent and matrilineal descent, and you're just going to like flat out statement, you to the right are Jews, you to the left are not Jews. That simple.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. There's a standard. The story gets complicated. Brundlefly's wife's mother is a Gentile who converted to marry her father, and she had a bat mitzvah. But sorry, go ahead, Levi.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for the reasons that David gave, I think just to simplify it, you could just say 50% or more Hebrew blood, or whatever you want to call it, should be the only standard.
I was saying you're just speculating on Richard Spencer's ethno-state, but I'm saying Orthodox rabbis control these decisions in Israel, and I'm saying, that's a matter of dispute. And that's why you have huge protest in the reform movement that represents like 2 million American Jews are switching over to BDS in boycotting Israel, because Israel is saying like, you guys aren't Jews anyways. But anyone who knows like Israeli politics, the Orthodox are only becoming more and more powerful in Israel. The demographics, there's becoming more and more Orthodox, and it's a huge problem. I'm saying that
David, what do you think of that standard though? Like of just doing it by blood rather than...
It doesn't matter what I think. I'm saying like, it was, in my opinion, doesn't matter. It's like, what do I think about the Constitution? Like, I could say, oh, I don't like the Constitution, but it doesn't
which
matter.
Do you think would be best for the country?
It doesn't matter what I think.
Okay.
You're saying like, it's the law, and you look like what changing it, and you're saying like, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. So okay, because my mother was Jewish, I was able to go into Orthodox schools, and although there are some Sephardim, or there are some groups of Jews that don't consider me Jewish, majority did consider me Jewish, and I was able to, just enter into Orthodox schools. Although it's a marriage problem, most, and saying like, that's why I'm on this show. Like, no Jew would seriously, I call a girlfriend, a friend in New York, and I always wanted to be a rabbi, and she was just like, no Jew is going to take a half Jew rabbi seriously, 0% chance. Like, it didn't matter how much knowledge I know, how much I learned, but I'm saying like Jews are like a caste type ethnic people, and it's not going to sit with.
So when you say half, you're referring to lineage, not religion,
so
right?
Saying,
so there is some
Jewish,
significance.
But I'm saying no self-respecting Jew is going to listen to me about Judaism because I'm a product of sin.
So there is some weight given to like just blood.
Hebrew ancestry. Yeah. And this is why I call my channel Babylonian Hebrew. I think that we should like to distinguish between what is Hebraic or Judean or Israelite, rather than calling it Jewish, just to avoid confusion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, most Jewish girls, they wouldn't be interested in marrying me. They're just like, his father's not Jew. Like, it'd be, what they call in Hebrew, like b'diavad, saying like second best situation. Like, like I'd rather find someone who's 100% Jewish. I'm
actually curious.
So what you're saying is that no self-respecting Hebrew isn't a racist.
Well, because that's our law.
I was going to ask, like, David, do you know how like law, common?
According to Jewish
David, do you know how common it is for like mixed? For there to be mixed marriages, like in that community?
In Orthodox community, or talking in America?
I guess like Orthodox community and like in Israel. Like, how much does each group of Jews?
In Israel, I think there's like still like a 5-10%, and I mean most mixed marriage in Israel is between Arabs and Jews, and I think about 5% of Israelis marry.
And of those mixed marriages, is it usually with the Jewish women or Arab women?
I'm not sure. I mean, and that was what Halsey like.
Because I'm thinking like if it's a Jewish woman, then the kids, despite being half Arab, would still qualify as fully Jewish, and I think that's kind of a strange policy. That's why I don't think it's good to give the mother that responsibility.
Well, I'm saying you're arguing with Moses, you're arguing with the sages. And that's what I say, my opinion doesn't matter. So it's like, okay, Levi thinks he could argue with thousands of years of prophets and Jewish sages just because he thinks so.
But I have a question for you.
I'm actually not arguing religion here. I'm arguing more like national politics.
Yeah, but it's saying like, who are you to stand up and argue against thousands of years of Jewish tradition, the prophets and sages?
Right.
He is a Hebrew. He is a Hebrew, as are you of partial Hebrew descent. He is just a Hebrew. He's talking about it on a nationalist kind of basis, on the sense that he belongs to a people by blood. He's not talking about it in terms of religion. He is speaking as a person of Hebrew descent more so than a Jew per se, is how I gather things. Am I incorrect?
Yeah. I mean, like, that's exactly right. Like, I think the entire country could convert to like Buddhism, and it would still be just as Jewish in my mind, or I guess just as Hebrew. Like, I wouldn't give that much of a shit. Like, I care just mostly about blood.
At that point, why separate between Palestinians? Like, if you're gonna have a Buddhist, Jewish ethno state, why not just let the Palestinians in and be equal with Palestinians? Why separate?
Because they're a different ethnic group.
Well, I mean, we could argue. Well, aren't they very closely related, though?
I mean, somewhat. Yeah. I mean,
actually, 3,000 genetic studies show that 3,000-year-old ancient skeletons from the Bronze Age, Levantine skeletons, as well as Lebanese Christians, I believe, and Druze minority sort of ethno-religion, have more genetically in common with the Middle Eastern component or the Levantine component found in Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and the vast majority of Mizrahi ancestry. So basically, that Levantine component corresponds to more so to Lebanese Christians, to 3,000-year-old Bronze Age Levantines, and to Druze than to any Palestinians. Sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something?
Oh,
yeah.
We've got someone new.
Hey, let's hear from Bob.
Yeah, I want to hear from this gentleman.
White power!
It's Norvin.
Is it really?
Norvin, is that you? It's Norvin. He's wearing underwear.
Bob, what do you want to add to the situation, Bob? You got an opinion on the who's a Jew question?
Yeah, Bob, what would your equivalent of
Nuremberg
laws
be? Who's a Jew question?
I'm staring right at a Jew.
You're staring at a few of us.
We do the Jews? We slit their throats.
Even half Jews? What about quarter Jews?
Even half Jews.
That Jews
Where would you draw the line?
Jewish.
All Jews.
But what do you mean by all? That's what we're asking. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, is an eighth okay? Quarter?
Nope.
What about a non-Jew who self-identifies as a Jew? Just someone who says, I'm a Jew, but actually they don't have any Jewish blood in them.
They also bite the bullet.
So, like a 30-second, is that okay? Like, what? You have to have some legal threshold, don't you?
Wow, all right, that's a guy with tidy whities on his head. Great optics. Peak optics. All right, anyway, sorry, continuing with the stream.
Okay. Anyone else want to voice their opinion on the JQ and the who's a Jew question?
Okay, so he was going by basically a one-drop rule. Considering he was basically, I guess, some sort of white nationalist, he's probably going by a one-drop rule, kind of like all these people say, one drop of non-European blood, and therefore, since Jews have significant drops of Levantine blood, I think that his position seems fairly reasonable and consistent. What do you guys think of that?
By definition, Jews are African. When you say you're a Jew, that by definition means you come from the Middle East, you come from Africa.
Whoa. Well, we come from the Levant.
So,
not the Middle East. I'm not sure where Africa. Israel. I mean, I guess technically because the ancestors of Middle Easterners may have evolved from the Horn of Africa. Yeah,
we were in Egypt 400 years. So even if Israel is part of Africa, we lived in Egypt for hundreds of years. So when you say you're a Jew, that means you're from Africa. Your ancestors come from Africa. You failed the one-drop rule. You cannot, even if you have blonde hair and blue eyes, if you're a Jew, by definition, you failed the one-drop rule.
Well, of course. Well, because the fact of the matter is, when you say Africa, what we're talking about here is, well, there are two different things you're talking about, and this is the ancient, sort of like the hypothesis of the ancient Proto-Afro-Asiatic homeland. And then, second of all, wasn't the concept a return? Wasn't the concept a return from Egypt? If I am not mistaken. Was not there a concept of returning from Egypt?
Well,
Sorry.
I'm just going to jump in and say, didn't Jews come from that or whatever in Mesopotamia?
I mean, Babylon, from Iraq.
Okay, Iraq.
We did live in Africa for hundreds of years.
Okay, true, but Jews also lived in Europe for more than 1,000 years. So
some of us
exactly, and the genetic makeup of Jews. The genetic makeup of Jews shows Bronze Age Levant more so than anything as an origin point. So that's just what the genetics facts say, basically.
All Jews who are ethnic Jews, at some point their ancestors lived in Africa. Only Ashkenazic Jews lived in Europe. So
of course, yeah, that's true. That's true, but living in Africa, the point he's saying is living in Africa doesn't necessarily make you an African, just as Ashkenazi Jews still have sometimes over 50% of their genetic makeup come from the Middle East, despite the fact that they have been living in Europe for 2,000 or more years.
I'm saying it's disputed whether you could call us African. You're saying we're Middle Eastern, but sometimes you say, okay, like I'm a Jew, I'm part African.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean. Although there also have been studies done that show that Jews. Sorry, go ahead.
Some people consider the continental, Israel's right in the middle, but you could continentally consider Israel as part of Africa.
It's the middle of the world,
Asia, isn't it?
Technically, it's Asia, but I think the Middle East should be considered its own continent because we have our own tectonic plate. We have our own tectonic plate. I totally
agree there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's different ways of dividing.
From like the edge of Persia to Israel, pretty much. I think that could be its own continent.
Yeah, I agree. All the way from the edge of the whole like Mashriq area. Yeah, and all right. So let's see. What do you think of I'd like to ask all of you, what do you think of the concept of Hebrew being differentiated from Jewish? Because there are places in the world where this has been done. And even within our own language, there are two distinct terms, Hebrew being talked about as in the sense of a Hebrew people. But the thing that's interesting is that this also exists, and this parallel, I believe, also exists in Slavic languages.
I'll give you the exact linguistic.
It does, yeah. Actually, in the USSR, my parents were legally classified as Hebrews, as if it was a race.
Even in America, Jews, non-religious Jews, were classified as Hebrew on their ethnicity. I believe during around the time of Ellis Island.
Until like 100 years ago, we were Hebrew. I mean, historically,
because Jews lobbied to be considered white along with other Middle Easterners, and now Jews and Middle Easterners and North Africans are considered "quote unquote" white in America, mostly because Jews and other Middle Eastern, North African peoples lobbied for that.
Jew is synonymous linguistically with like Hindu, where it's a geographic designation, like Hindu
Right.
refers to
It's an
the,
ethno-religion. Hindustan
refers
and
to our-
Judea.
But I'm saying Hindu refers to the river that divides a certain part, and some people on that side of the river in all the traditions. So the Greeks referred to the land of Judah in the Bible as Eudaeus, and then the Romans had their little changing of it. And eventually the word for Judah, Eudaeus, the Romans referred to us, the people who came from the region of Judah, and that word comes in throughout history to eventually become morphed to Jew. So like in Ukrainian Russian, somebody's like a Zid, and then German, it's a Yud, a Yid, and it's morphed into modern English as Jew. But the root of it comes from Judah, and that's what
Yehuda.
the Romans.
Yehudim.
That's what the Romans referred to, like the lands of Judea and Samaria. Is it the West Bank or Judea and Samaria? So when you had the division between the 10 kingdoms and Jerusalem, you had your tribe of your Judah who followed in Jerusalem, and then you had your northern kingdoms, and then eventually the Judaic tribes of Judah became dominant across Israel. And so when the Greeks ruled Israel, it was the land of Judah. And so that's Jew. So I mean, when you call someone a Jew, it's basically saying like you're not from here, you're from the land of Judea. So I mean, Hebrew is a more Hebrew is like the language that we speak, or maybe customs, as where Judah is a more ethnic, racial, demographic.
It's an ethnonym is the term you're looking for.
Really,
Judean. It's the Judean ethnonym.
I mean,
and that's
really,
the funny
if
thing.
you say,
but Jewish is a bad term for that exact reason. Judaism is not an authentic word.
If you really want to get Malcolm X, Jew is kind of like the word nigger. Jew is the name given to us by the people who conquered us, by the people who murdered our ancestors, by the people who subjugated us. So
Ani Yehudi, you say Yehudi.
It'd be like a black person who embraces, like, God forbid, like I'm a nigger. They're embracing the identity that their conquerors gave them. So when you say we're Jews, you're saying we're the people that the Germans defeated. So when we, and to some extent, you're saying Jew is a bad misnomer. So when we call each other Jews, we're designating ourselves. We're the people that the Romans defeated. We're the people that the Greeks defeated. We're the people that the British defeated. We're the people that the Germans defeated. And actually, the word has no meaning from an internal purpose. It's actually an insult somewhat to be called a Jew. But it's been so ingrained in us that we're a defeated people that we refer to ourselves by the name that our persecutor gave us.
Exactly, which is part of the reason why I called my channel Babylonian Hebrew in the first place, is because I wanted to escape some of that baggage there and talk about it in a purely ethnonymic sense. Go ahead.
But do all communities that practice Judaism worldwide, I'm not just talking about individual converts, are they all Hebrew though? Like, are not the Iraqi Jews in India, but are the older Jews in India pure Hebrew, or mostly?
Well, very few Jews are pure Hebrew, but most Jews have at least a small amount of Hebrew descent. And because the mutations that come from different parts of the world look very different, we can say with a degree of certainty that yes, this is, Bronze Age Levantine DNA in certain populations, even though it might be very small trace amounts. Basically, most Jews nearly all Jewish communities have varying. Nearly all Jews have varying amounts of Hebrew ancestry. That amount varies per community. Sorry, go ahead.
My mother is 99.4 Ashkenazic Jewish. There always have been converts. Converts are always small, and generally the Talmud, historically, converts have to marry with the Jewish people. So you don't have communities of converts where people converted and remain separate communities of converts. And it even says clearly, like in Jewish law, like converts eventually have to marry into the Jewish people, or they're not considered Jewish.
Well, okay, but all right. So where would that put someone like Luke Ford then?
Well, I'm saying if he doesn't merit to have any children, it doesn't matter. So he converted to Judaism, and like God forbid, okay, maybe his soul will go to heaven. But if he didn't have any children, so if he married another convert, and then he raised his children Orthodox, presumably his children would marry Jews. Or if he married a Jewish woman, and it's saying if he doesn't merit to get married, then it doesn't matter. So I mean, in a sense, according to Luke 4, there's only like 100 Orthodox converts in America each year. So I mean, there's not many Orthodox converts, and of those Orthodox converts, if they really make it, their kids will go to Orthodox schools, and their kids will marry full-blooded Jews and will be acclimated into the greater community. And if they don't, usually they'll be just distance, and they'll fall away from the Jewish community after a generation or two. Or in Luke Ford's case, maybe he won't even make it one generation. God forbid, I bless him, that Luke Ford should find the right woman and build up a Jewish family. But if he doesn't do that, then not to say his conversion was for naught. Maybe he'll go to heaven. Maybe he accomplished something. But in terms of his bloodline, it won't make a difference.
So you mentioned heaven. So if you don't mind me asking, from your understanding, so is there a hell in Judaism?
It's a dispute. I mean, according to most understanding, there's a purgatory period of 11 months. So you have like the Kaddish prayer that people say, like Yiskadal, Yiskadash, May Rabbah. After, in synagogue, it's like the highlight of the service for mourning, where the descendants of the mourners say that prayer, and you have to have a minyan of 10 people. But generally, it's said that after a person dies, there's a year of purgatory, and then after that, either they go to heaven or their soul is like returned. There is some opinions like there's eternal hell, but generally there is no hell. There's an 11-month period of purgatory, and like the flesh being eaten by maggots and worms is part of that purgatory process. And then after that, there might be different positions, but according to most of the sages, everybody makes it to heaven, and it's just a question of their purgatory, how rough their purgatory is.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But that is disputed among scholars. But
disputed. Okay.
Catholics, have like the eternal damnation. Generally, Jews hold at least that all Jewish souls were in existence at Sinai, and all Jews, so to say, go to heaven. And even non-Jews, like in the class I'm giving on my YouTube channel, the Ramchal of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto in Italy 300 years ago, he says that most likely all souls go to heaven. It's conceivable that a person could become so wicked, maybe like Hitler or whatever, like his soul or something. But even according to Rabbi Luzzatto, chances are that even Hitler's soul may.
Hello, testing. Hello. Seems like something happened with the podcast. Seems like it crashed. All right. I guess everyone just needs to relog. What happened? Yeah, I know it's live. David, pop back into the chat. Everyone just relog. All right, hold on one moment. I guess I'll just carry the show from here. Anyway. All right. Babylonian Hebrew one-on-one. Anyway, so let's see, what were we talking about? We were talking about, I guess I'm just going to hash this out real quick. Hebrew versus Jew. I think that this should be something that's important to delineate. And I mean, David wants to use the term Jewish as an ethnonym, but I just think practically and pragmatically speaking, don't have to call it Hebrew or Jewish distinction, but I think that we should clarify between an ethnonym for our people and a religious term for our faith. Like, I mean, Hinduism, Judaism are not real things, or Shintoism. It's called like these things have actual names in their religion. Like I think Sikhism is not called Sikhism; it's called Sikhi or something like that, if I recall correctly. So I'm sure that we have our own term for that. And I mean, I don't know much even about my own language because, like Malcolm X, I've been deracinated. I've been torn from my roots. But yeah, I'm sure David can talk a bit about it when he gets back on the chat. Anyway, it seems like something's going wrong with the chat. It seems like it isn't working. You guys got kicked out and blocked by the guy. Hold on one second. Hold on. No. I'm not gonna let that guy take over the chat. All right, hold on. That's bullshit. Give me one sec. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep going with the show. Fuck it. Yeah, I'm not gonna let that guy dominate the situation. Here, I'm gonna see if I can re-add you guys to the Hangout. Give me one moment. Not gonna be hacked by some goy. Give me one moment. Quote unquote hacked. Or whatever the fuck just happened. I don't think that was it. I think it was just honestly just an itch. Like an error. Just a error. Here, I'm gonna see okay. Add people. Here, just take this link. David, I'm just gonna send you the link. Check your Twitter. Yeah, everyone just check your Twitter and hop back on. Here, just rejoin from here. Plus, I have a backup. Here, I'm just gonna use my phone. Yo, just call me 1v1, Levi. Just 1v1. Call me. Yeah. Oh, perfect. You're back in the chat. Brilliant. Yeah, just rejoin the chat from the link. It's easy. Yeah, just rejoin the chat. All right, awesome. So looks like the Hangout link doesn't. Yeah, this is it. This is it. Yeah, everyone can jump in the chat. Anyone can jump in the chat. Yep, I can. Hello, hello. Hey, what up, what up? Oh shit, I got it working. Hey. Awesome, awesome. All right, let's go. He's chill. Yeah, all right, let's go.
I remember you. You were on Dab's stream a while ago. Yes.
Yeah, so you guys can just talk real quick for a bit. I'm just gonna grab some water for a sec.
How's it going, Mitch? What, how about that Patrick Little? Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, I'm personally not a fan. What are your thoughts on him? So part of me thinks he's like good for us in a very indirect sense. Like if I'm going to have enemies, I want them to be as crazy and maximally conspiratorial as possible. Well, like, I think you're kind of assuming that it's necessary for, you know, like racially conscious whites to be the enemies of Jews. And I don't think that is necessary. I was just saying, I think you were assuming that racially conscious whites are the enemies of Jews. I agree. I don't think necessarily do. It's like cemented. Exactly. I think there's a version of white nationalism that, you know, maybe that is compatible with Judaism in the sense that probably white nationalists who think that Ashkenazi Jews are just, you know, a sort of weird inbred form of whites. I actually don't. Well, I don't even think that is a necessary standard. Like, even if white nationalists don't consider Jews white, I think that's totally acceptable as long as they don't try to instigate any conflict between the groups. You know, like I don't think they even have to go as far as Jared Taylor. No. Yeah, that's definitely an extreme case. I'm just thinking that.
Are you getting an echo on this? Am I the only one getting an echo?
I was getting a slight echo.
And the YouTube page isn't working. Although you could hear it. Only the volumes appearing on the YouTube page. You can't see anything.
Wait, are we live right now, or?
We're live. You can hear the volume. I'm listening to YouTube, but you can't see anything.
You see.
Yeah, we're live right now.
Actually,
it's just that our good friend somehow managed to do something to script the Google Hangout. If anyone knows how to undo this, it would be convenient. But we're managing to stream either way. It's just not going to have the visuals now. Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of like an annoying and spiteful thing to do, but like I'm just deliberately not going to shut down another stream. Sorry? Oh, the call's working fine. Yeah, this should be actually working fine. Yeah.
No, like previous call. How come it got canceled? Yeah,
was just going to say that in response to Mitch, like I don't think it has to go as far as philo-Semitism. I think just if they can take a neutral stance on that topic, I would be more than happy with that. You know?
I guess I was sort of including neutrality under the aegis of philo-Semitism. Like, I guess I meant to say like not so much philo-Semitism as non-extreme anti-Semitism. Like,
right. I would be honest. Like, I would even tolerate a tiny amount. Like, if it were like, you know, you guys like cut it out with the ADL and all that stuff. Like,
yeah,
that's completely legitimate in my view.
It's like I would call it healthy skepticism, but not. You're right. Like, as a Gentile, I wouldn't be in favor of like I guess extreme anti-Semitism or whatever, but definitely like healthy skepticism, and then just neutrality in general.
So, sure. Okay. Well, so let's say like there's this sort of, I don't know, let's call it neutral Semitism, for lack of a better term. My theory is that like it's doomed and destined to lose out to like Andrew Anglin style extreme anti-Semitism, just because I think that anti-Semitism is really in the DNA of white nationalism as an idea.
But I don't think it has to be. I mean, that would suggest that Jews are intrinsically opposed to white interest, which
I don't know. Not necessarily.
In that case, then sure, yeah, then they are doomed to be enemies. But
I don't think
I just don't see it that way.
I don't think that we're necessarily opposed to what they perceive as white interest, but I mean, I just feel like we're just like as an idea, like as a scapegoat, we are so like deeply ingrained in their ideology.
Sure, but I think that shifts the burden onto us to basically do everything possible to minimize, you know, the negative impact we're having on their cause.
I agree with that, but I'm fairly pessimistic about our ability to succeed and convince them that we're not the bad guys. I think that it's too addictive to view us as the bad guys.
Oh well, but you could see why people would like. You could see why people would think that though.
No, I totally understand.
But is it not possible, Mitch, that in a lot of cases we are the bad guys?
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe people like me would have. So go ahead. Maybe people like me, we have to go to Holocaust class, learn about 20 million dead, no mass graves, 20 million burned. Average human size is about what?
You're exaggerating, but actually,
8 pounds. About 8 pounds of ash, right? And okay, so all right, so okay, we'll say you guys can see that. How about the rabbis sucking infant penises after circumcision? They call that traditional circumcision or natural circumcision.
It's because early on, the baby, you have to expose them to sexual experiences early on, so that they, have their earliest memories are pleasurable. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's hella based, dude. Awesome. Yeah. I mean.
Go ahead.
Ooh, I just had a good idea. I can just pick this up from OBS, can't I? Yeah. Sorry, hello, can you hear me? Oh, it's you again. The neat sock got to the other call. I mean, I'm not even sure how to do it without this fucking dude invading, so I'm just gonna post up here and just go solo for a little bit. Yeah, I just wanted to say, anyway, I just think it's kind of interesting that I'm a repatriationist and of course, Duvid's on the stream. Like, I get why someone would want to shut it down. Like, haha, it's a joke. There's probably like some thread on like 4chan or Cow or something like that. Thing like, oh, Jews streaming, look at Jews saying all these ridiculous things, haha, let's crash the stream. I mean, I totally get it. And it's like, I get the pent up rage and whatnot. It's like, whatever, dude. I totally understand, but it's just like, you think the stream's going anywhere, you have another idea. So anyway, let's see. What should I do? I have some ideas actually about how I can pick the stream up. I think I might go on a walk around my neighborhood, maybe do a little bit of a monologue. Give me one sec.
everyone in the chat, go grab yourself something to drink. I'm just going to pause this out real quick.
Those fucking retarded Glam thought they could shut the stream down. Anyway, we're back up with Babylonian Hebrew. Hey, what up, what up, what up, what up, what up, what up? All right, so let's see. I'm just going to rant about Jews now. I'm going to talk about Jews and Jewish stuff now, because I know that that's what the audience loves. So let's see. Was the stream shut down successfully? No. Slight inconvenience? Yes. Thank you very much. All right. So the guy in the chat earlier, stay strong or strong something or something like that, was ranting about how larpily about Jews. This is your last chance. Spoke to the fact created all the bad things in the world. And it, like, yes, I understand the Jews fucked Westerners over, but going into the hangout of a repatriationist Jew and inconveniencing them isn't exactly going to do much for that. But the thing is, that's all that you can do, because basically you're kind of stuck in the situation where you're probably a NEET and your society is basically like the cathedral, as it were, is largely kind of like a Hebrew or Jewish run thing. So it's like you can't do anything in your personal life. You're basically powerless and pitiful. All you can do is effectively go onto a Google stream and inconvenience a repatriationist Jew, a Jew who basically probably agrees with a lot of what you think, but I just find it highly, highly amusing. Anyway, this stream is going to be going on for a while longer. So let's see. Give me one moment. Anyway, this stream is going to be... All right. Any comments in the chat? If you're in the chat, sound off. Go for it. All right. Le'ebik troll. Le'eben troll. Let's see. All right. Hiding user. Hiding user. All right, awesome. So let's see if I can turn this into a going for a walk stream. Not sure about that. Can I pick up directly where the last stream cut off? Let's see if I can do that. Oh yeah, I think I can. Hold on. All right, awesome. All right, awesome. So, what up in the chat? Let's see what's gone down. Yeah, someone says, why mock him? We live in a society of Jewish supremacism. Why mock him? Well, I don't know. Why shut down my stream? I guess a little bit of bitterness and annoyance, frustration, maybe. Venting a little bit of frustration. That's why I'd mock him. So that's why I'm mocking the neat sock. Also because I heard his neat sock rantings in the chat and I saw his hilarious underwear wrapped around his face. The fact that he invested in an Israeli flag
and a Nazi flag says a lot about his character. Let's just say that. Someone said slavery wouldn't have been in America if not for the Jew. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. You're just talking nonsense, dude. Slavery would absolutely be in America. Maybe the proportions would be different. Perhaps there was a significant influence or impact from Jews and Jewish merchants. But no, it's not that. Don't try to exclusively blame European slavery on Jews. Nice try, buddy, but you're just spewing bullshit, dude. It's completely historically inaccurate. And don't say Jews or Middle Easterners inspired Europeans to keep slaves. Yes, Europeans were the only people to uniquely say slavery is bad, but or maybe that's not even always the case, but they were one of the people who sort of brought about this age of great anti-slavery. But keep in mind that Europeans had slaves like everyone else. Up throughout all of history, the European slave trade is not something you can just hand wave away and blame it on the Jews, although that does make a very convenient little black and white moral narrative, though, doesn't it? All right, I am about to go for a walk. I'm going to turn the camera on and go for a little bit of a jaunt around New York City. It's going to be fun. Buckle up. Give me just 1 second. Everyone can go grab themselves some water, get themselves something to drink, something to eat. Someone said the existence of black slaves in America was highly dependent on the existence of Jewish slave trade. No, not quite. The Jewish slave trade was a very large factor, but there would still be black slaves in America were there not Jews. I mean, I think that that's a bit of a stretch to say that the existence of Jewish slaves in America was highly dependent. No, because if Jews weren't there, it wasn't dependent, but it was highly influenced by it. Jews were a very large factor there, but it's not like if Jews were completely out of the equation, there wouldn't be slavery going on in the New World. Or I mean, we don't know. Maybe that is the case. We don't know how history looks, but I don't buy the narrative that the big mean racist Jew inspired Whitey to enslave black people, and their pure-hearted souls never had such an idea ever before in all of human history. I mean, we know that there have been slaves all over from Europe to the Middle East. Yes, Jews and Arabs did focus in slaves, but to say that Jews are the only people who enslaved or the only people who made Europeans enslaved, like did Jews make the Romanians enslave the Gypsies? I mean, shit. Hello, testing, testing. Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Ooh, interesting. All right. Give me 1 second. I'm just working on rehabilitating this. I'll be damned if I'm letting the stream go anywhere because of a neat. I'm just checking to see exactly what went on with the Hangout situation just so I can prevent this going on again because I think it's very interesting. I'm curious to find out how this happened. I mean, there are reports of people doing it, but of course there are no reports of how it actually goes down or conclusive things of how to solve it. It's very interesting. Here, it says, fascinating stuff. anyone has any resources in the chat, it would be interesting. All right, stream sniping. It's an exploit. It's just like basic, like or it's not. No, it's not stream sniping. It's what's the name of the term? It's like I've seen this happen before. I've seen videos on this, but yeah, sort of live stream hijack. Yeah. Here it is. Interesting. Here allows anyone to remove another account featuring from an external Hangout chat group. Brilliant. Yeah, I think I've seen this happen before. Requires no hacking, technical knowledge, or packet voodoo of any kind to abuse, of course. Let's see. Fascinating. Now my internet isn't working. Oh, phenomenal. Phenomenal. All right. I'm just going to go home. Ain't nobody getting stream sniped here. Hello, Goyan. I'm back. All right. Pat. Who's Pat? All right. Hold on. All right, awesome. So I'm just going to redirect the audio from another Hangout to this Hangout. Brilliant. Yeah, go ahead. Speak. It doesn't matter. Let's just continue with it. The point is, we outsmarted the dumb fucking goyim. We have the stream working again. Speak. Yeah, you're fucking live. Is that cool, or do you want me to stay not live? Yeah, you're live. Send him the link. I'll join. Yep, indeed. Hello, how am I sounding? Can you hear me? I guess that it has the less of general first, the less of frustration. Yeah. Hold on one sec. I'm just going to do some tech stuff. Be right back. Placing, like, peacefully placing
Armenian person, if you're Armenian. So if there's some way to prevent that, I don't know. Well, like I said, that's part of the aspect of our own language, but we might like those sometimes we'll have our own things too. Kind of like hope that sorts of don't want to get nervous or whatever. It's like the same thing with concept of like you don't want to get
Testing. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? How do I sound? Oh yeah, hell yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I wonder if like eventually this stuff will start to creep into Jeff Bezos' neighborhood, Bill Gates' neighborhood. Like, how much longer do they have to maintain their all white communities while like the poorer ones all?
There's a term that Marilyn Monroe's mentioned that a long time ago. And I think she used the term globe shitter, and it basically means people who are rich who travel all around the world to do the same things everywhere they go. And I tend to view people like Bill Gates as
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of these guys also vote for liberal politicians who presumably are going to raise their taxes so that they can feed all these poor people. So it's kind of like they'll take the extra tax payments just so that they get, I guess, like they have more people buying their products.
Well, let me bring you to a new level of woke. I would say, like, actually, like, when so what they're really so there's policy because they can get the
So, hello? Say something? Hello? Yeah, for some reason you guys are turned down really quiet. Do you think you guys could turn up your volumes maybe? Hello? Yeah, turn your volumes up. All of you. Yeah, it's still really quiet. But... No, all of you are quiet. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I guess our sounds must have been turned down or something. All right, then talk.
Are you just like turn up the volume on your end?
All right, sure, talk. Whatever. Just go ahead, talk.
Talk. Blah, 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 blah.
Just speak your speech. It doesn't matter. Just keep talking.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you meant that.
Okay, so we were talking about Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and we were saying, like, basically they get tax exemptions, so they can get all the capitalist benefits of migrant workers and illegal immigrant labor without actually paying the extra taxes.
That's the funny thing is like the commies like have like some point, you know. And so I actually wonder if a massive recession were to hit, if people would go in like the Bernie Sanders like socialist, up against the rich direction, or if it would be more of a racial thing where everybody would just be out for their own group.
Well, I tend to think that people in the whole stuff, right, tend to exaggerate how much racial conflict there will be. I think there will be some collaboration, but it will be kind of like a great
right.
So
yeah, I just have to on like how the prevalence of and the other just like, doesn't give a shit. I have no sense of how aware they are.
I guess like relatively area, I'd say they have a clear idea of what's going on. They pretty much know about maybe the SJW ideology and that sort of thing, but they don't actually. I don't think they fully grasp the depth of the situation we're in, which is part of the problem.
Like, I feel like there must be some, even just like subtle indicators of shit that's going on. Like they might see more protests or something, or, news articles might be more exaggerated than usual. Like there must be a lot of like little subtle things subtle changes in their environment that they're subconsciously picking up on.
I would
Like,
say on a subconscious level, I would agree. On a overtly conscious level, I would say there's nothing there. But yes, there is something brewing in their subconscious mind.
I would love to just like see the world through the eyes of a normie. That sounds really condescending, but I wonder what they think about it.
Yeah, I mean, just to think about it, like I was a normie like 2 years ago, man. So
no, I totally was.
Well, I was like an ANCAP kind of LARPer, so I actually haven't been a normie for like 5 years, but
that is definitely like an important stage of the red pill process. I didn't spend very long in my libertarian stage.
Oh yeah, I got heavily into Stefan Molyneux, like anarcho-capitalism type stuff at one point.
I actually still love Stefan. I mean, I don't agree with his like a lot of his politics, but he still does really funny interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that as I get more red pill, I go more away from Stefan, but I think he still has he has like somewhat of like, he taught me how to think basically. Yeah, I don't follow basically any of his philosophy, but he taught me like the Socratic method.
Definitely. And he also just did really good interviews with like Jared Taylor and like other, racial philosophers and stuff.
Yeah, that was in like 2015, and that was when I actually started getting red pilled. It's like when I was watching Stefan Molyneux's race realism interviews.
So, Pat, John, you're a college student, right?
Yes, I am.
What are you studying, or like a rough description of what you're studying?
Yeah, I'm. I don't know if I'm gonna dox that, to be honest. I'm sorry, man.
Is it a STEM thing though, or is it?
It's
liberal arts.
No, it's not liberal arts or STEM.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe it could be considered STEM. I guess maybe it's kind of like quasi STEM.
Quasi STEM. I'm actually. I was studying statistics, and I'm contemplating moving into economics right now, but. Yeah, that goes. Like, what's your college life like?
My college life is great, man. I have red pill friends in real life, a decent amount of them. So I met them there, and that was that.
How'd you meet them?
Are we still live, by the way?
Yes, we are. Okay. Would you like me to come live, or yeah, we're still live just because I'm about to say some stuff. Like once you're done, I have a point to make. But no, please go ahead.
No, you can go, Babs.
No. I was interesting. You were answering a question about how did you meet your quote red pill friends. So please go ahead.
Oh, sure. Well, basically, just going to college Republicans meetings. Like people would show up over time, and you just keep going to them, and things would snowball. So you'd have a friend who, say, you meet a person at, like, say you're a college student, right? You go to a college Republicans meeting, and you might meet one red pill friend, right? Or maybe you red pill somebody else. And then it's like, now you're like kind of a two-man team. And it's like you guys can both red pill somebody else. And then that kind of snowballs. And so that's basically how I built a network of red pill friends.
That's really interesting. Are these Chads, or are they more like cerebral?
I would say a couple of them are Chads. And then some of them are more cerebral. So it just depends.
That's really interesting, because I feel like there's like a big difference between the Chad red pill person versus the like more introspective red pill person. Like they come at it from like totally different angles.
We have the cultured thug mentality that Babs talks about sometimes. It's like we want to be Chad and also be intellectual.
Right. I think that's the best balance.
Yeah.
Funny, the Republican club at my school, I was considering like going to a meeting, but the president is like a gay Mexican or something. Like it's super pause. Like it's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, but the thing is it's not actually about the institution itself of the college Republicans. It's just about like you go there and you hope that someone else who thinks like you goes there, and you meet each other, and then you kind of hit it off from there. So like it's especially important in like say the beginning of the semester or beginning of the new year or whatever, that you go to these meetings, because there's going to be, I guarantee you there will be someone there if you're at a big enough school who you can hit it off with.
That makes sense.
And they might not even be fully there, or depending on your definition of red pill, but no, but you can definitely get at least one person there, and then you guys can work together, and you can have some camaraderie.
Right. I actually met, like, when I first came to college, I was like a mad liberal, but I met a guy, and he was pretty conservative, and like over time, he sort of coaxed me into the red pill, and that's sort of how I got to where I am.
Yeah, mine was just totally just watching internet videos, man. Yeah.
I think the most important one for me was race and IQ. I feel like that one gave way to all the others.
Yeah, I would say one of the major points of my red pilling was realizing that, there's a competence hierarchy, and that competence hierarchy can be like partially genetically inherited, and it's totally unfair, but like that's life.
So basically, for both of you, it was either hereditarianism or evolution, or human variation, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, a breaking of the concept of blank slate theory, as it were. So one thing that I'm curious about is, both of you said that like either some sort of like, I guess, quote, right-wing economic ideology, like libertarianism, or some sort of capitalist ideology is a stepping stone. It's funny because for me, I never had that phase, and maybe that's because like capitalist types are kind of smarter and more obtuse, and me, I'm kind of a bit dumber. Like I used to be a Marxist, for instance, and then I was like a Weberian, and then I was interested in like Marx and Weber, and then I was interested in like Spengler, so I kind of progressed through that path. And then there are some people I know who get into some things that people might describe as, quote, red pill, from a conspiracy path. They come from the angle of, there are powers that be, and there's information that's being withheld. Oh, look, here's effectively a conspiracy. So I think that there are three different angles there that I can think of. There's sort of the conspiracist path. There's this sort of, I guess, quote, like the left-wing path. Like, for instance, I come at things usually from an angle of sort of like indigenous rights, self-determination, and
actually that
principles like that.
I would say that the communist path and the conspiracist path are kind of variants of the same path.
Well, all right, to a degree, but when I say communist, well, maybe my path isn't exactly the communist path, but it's sort of the sociological path, in the sense that it went from Marx to Weber to Spengler. Like, I was looking for looking at things like social caste and status and group dynamics, and thus I came to the concept of group dynamics. And then later, I learned more about hereditarianism, which I kind of always took for a bit of a granted. All right, go ahead.
Right. Well, isn't one of the main assumptions of Marxism that it's the rich teaming up against the poor? That's the problem.
Yes, but Weber diversified that. He talked about party, class, and status, and then Spengler talked about civilization. Civilizations. He talked about civilizations as organisms that have a birth of that.
I have a question for you guys. How much did the gender question play into your red pill? Because personally, for me, that was actually one of my first red pills at around, say, age 15 or 16.
It was huge for me. That was actually, if not, it might be like second to race and IQ as like the most important red pill, because like it got me thinking about like feminism, and made me question like a lot of the assumptions I had about like women and how you're supposed to behave to impress women and stuff.
I tend to think that sort of the evolutionary psychology path, like to race realism, for me was paved by sort of looking at these pickup artistry blogs, or the the fucking big towel blogs, and just out of curiosity. And that kind of laid the basis for thinking in evolutionary psychological terms. So I think that plays a huge part too.
I think that mentality is like, if you had to encapsulate the red pill into one mindset, I would say it's thinking of the world in sort of like game theoretic evolutionary terms.
Yeah, I mean, like, just realizing, I think one of the other things is just realizing that what people say is different from what they actually act out and believe. Definitely that played into the gender red pill for me, but that's also a part of the race red pill. in a way. Is people like to mouth these platitudes, but they actually, do things that are different from what they say.
It's funny too, because when you do like swallow these red pills, you wonder like, well, were the people telling me these things, were they just oblivious, or did they knowingly sort of deceive me? Like, for instance, with women, like you see that other guys are successful with women, treating them a certain way versus like how you were treating them, and you think to yourself, like, well, they were fed the same bullshit as me, but they were still able to like behave like properly. It's like you start to wonder if like you were deliberately like sort of duped versus it was unconscious.
Sorry, go ahead. No, what I was going to say wasn't that important. You can go ahead.
No, I was asking a separate question, so respond to him first, and then I'll.
Well, I guess what I was going to say is that I think part of the reason people conjure up this big conspiracy is that they know the amount of social status you will lose if you actually speak the truth. So even if they actually know that some of these things are false, they try and give people they try and convince other people these ideas because they care about them and they don't want them to be ruined. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I mean, I remember telling myself to think and not to think certain things when I was younger, so that's also interesting. One thing that I also like to point out is earlier I never quite fully understood, or at least I didn't really want to assume as to why a lot of people view capitalism or libertarianism or ancapism, things that I don't really exactly like, because I think they're kind of atomized and selfish and contract based rather than society based. And I think the idea is the Gesellschaft versus the Gemeinschaft here. But Quidas Veritas knows more about this than me. But the point is, I thought I looked at it more coming at it from a sense of like, oh, collectivism is good, pro-collectivist, anti-individualist. But I can see how capitalism or libertarianism or ancapism or whatever is a logical precursory step, because even though there is, let's say, the NAP and it's very individualistic and contractual and whatnot, it also recognizes hierarchy and difference within, at least on an individual scale, but also on a group scale. So I can understand now, at least from the language that you guys talk about your sort of like Catholic and libertarian passions and language you use from that part. It's now starting to make a lot more sense. To what degree I think hierarchy amongst students is a taboo idea? Even in a non-hereditary context, the idea that someone is even if, let's say, if a random roll of the dice with each birth, especially if things aren't determined, the idea that certain people are better at certain things than other people. I feel like there's controversy in that to some degree, with the idea of like everyone gets a trophy. Like I went to a school where literally no matter who won whatever event, everyone got a trophy. We didn't use a grading system until I think junior high, which was just astonishing because it put the kids who wanted to transfer at a disadvantage for ideological reasons. So I just, what do you think about the idea of a rejection of hierarchy in the modern age? And is that why capitalism or anti-capitalism or libertarianism was a big stepping stone to the red pill, for so far as the red pill is a rejection of hierarchy?
Yeah, I would say that I think it's definitely true that depending on the context you view it, different people tend to reject the idea of hierarchy in general. And I think this is tied to kind of the Enlightenment thinking. So, for example, conservatives want to deny that, race realism because they view that anyone, like we need to have an egalitarian system where anyone can work their way up if they work hard, right? And liberals will view it like, well, if we allow people to work hard, some people are going to work harder than others, and that's going to disadvantage them. So I think it just depending on the context, a different conception of hierarchy is rejected and accepted. But generally, like talking about hierarchy in general is very taboo. I would say like 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that liberal, like the thing that scares liberals the most about capitalism is the idea of like hierarchies and intrinsic, like just making distinctions, sort of between people's abilities. Because I mean, this is kind of a petty way to look at it, but I think a lot of them come to their liberalism because of feelings of inadequacy that they sort of have about themselves. Like, well, like they might be thinking, in a world where there are hierarchies, like where does that put me? Like that. And that might be why they're so. I mean, at least with like feminists and like college liberals, like I think a lot of them are drawn to it because they don't feel like they have any like actual skills. So.
But I also think some of the most like egregious forms of hierarchy are promoted by conservatives. Like Babs was talking about capitalism, like just like endlessly shilling for capitalism with no regard for anything else is a brutal form of hierarchy that's not actually good for the social order. And so, even I guess like
I'm not opposed to hierarchy in that sense, but I think I would posit that it's the wrong hierarchy. I'm not sure if capitalism selects for the right teacher, as it were. Correct. Is capitalism making a good aristocracy, or is it making malevolent elite?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was trying to get at, is that even when we do promote hierarchy, like conservatives or whoever promote actually a type of hierarchy that's bad for society, that they view as, oh, it's more equal than this other hierarchy somehow.
Yeah, I wonder if there is like a maximally benevolent, or like what the least malevolent hierarchy possible is. Like, yeah, I wonder if that would be.
By the way, I would posit that it's a traditional sort of like system that blends sort of an aristocratic and a theocratic or a monarchic system, because that is the most caring and loving and heart-filled system, I guess, in a sense. Because but I mean, partially because it organically arises. But right. Also, I just wanted to quickly say earlier to John, if I recall correctly, there was a study saying that conservative, there's basically an inverse correlation, with the exception of extremists. There's an inverse correlation between happiness. In America, there's an inverse correlation between self-esteem and identifying as a quote left-winger. So basically, left-wingers have lower self-esteem in America, and right-wingers have higher self-esteem. Fun fact.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. That's observation.
I was going to add also, Babs, like you said that in the past, like monarchic systems produced slightly more benevolent hierarchies, but I feel like in the past there was like feudalism and serfdom, and you could just treat poor people like shit. So I wonder if there could be some middle ground between like the current system and that.
I don't think poor people were necessarily treated like that. Not every ancient society was like feudal Russia with the Tsar, like the peasants, like human capital, kind of what do you call it? Kind of like
expendable,
indentured servitude or slavery, effectively. Yeah, I mean, not every monarchy or peasant system even has to be like that. They're a bit good. The idea of being decent started with the Enlightenment. Like people, I mean, yes, there was a big idea of let's say free the slave was a proto-Enlightenment thing, but slavery in the past was different. There were all forms of it, and there were some visualizations that even said, slaves that were to be captured and set free after X many years or after so many generations. But I don't know. There's more nuance to the ancient history. Not all of it is just a blanket of barbarity.
That's true.
Anyway, go ahead, John and Levi. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you're right in a lot of aspects about traditional societies being not as brutal probably as we make them out to be post-Enlightenment. But I was going to ask you, what do you think caused specifically the Russian czars to treat their people so badly? Because that was kind of one of the more brutal cases of a traditional system in history. Possibly, or at least in European civilization.
It's hard to say, like, how badly, like, I don't know how badly serfs were treated under the Tsar, but I do know, like, that the newer system was even worse. So, and the newer system attempted to, like, equalize things. So, yeah, I don't know, like, what like what life was like under the Tsar.
Did you know it all, Babs?
Sorry, do I what? Something about the Tsars?
I was asking you, did you know why particularly the Tsardom was so bad in Russia? Well, at least in terms of comparing it to
Some
others.
people attribute it to like harsh governing style learned by the Mongols, but I don't know about that.
Yeah, and that would kind of fall into place with like Dugin talking about like Eurasianism or whatever. So yeah, Russia is it's an interesting place because it's kind of a crossroads between Asia and Europe, culturally at least.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting stuff. I mean, insofar as Russia is the Russian Federation, I would say that. But be real, like the Slavic people, they are Slavs. Slavs are Slavs. Like Slavs are a cohesive bloc. The idea of Russians being so different from Slavs, I mean, it's like, look at them. They're the same. They're white people. Yes, they do have a lot of the Central Asian component within Europeans, but they're basically, I mean, they're just Slavs. They're the same as other Slavs, and they have that Indo-European steppe ancestry, yes. And they may even have a little bit of other ancestries mixed down on top of that, but fundamentally they're more genetically related to Slavic people than to, like, let's say, Mongols. You know, they are Europeans in my eyes, even though they may be different in some ways in mentality and in hegemonic aspirations. They may not want to consider them. They aren't, quote, the West. They make a big deal about that, but I mean, fundamentally, they are European. They are European people, as far as I see it.
And I think that's actually what I mean, I agree with you in terms of the ethnic part. I would say in terms of the cultural part, I think this is what makes maybe Russian Orthodox Christianity a little bit more robust than, say, Catholicism. I don't know. I don't know much about Christianity, but I do know that Orthodoxy is less cooked than the current state of Catholicism. I know there are traditional Catholics out there. I respect you guys. But yeah. It seems like Russians and Slavs definitely more resistant to the pause.
I've heard that, like, even now the pause is penetrating Eastern Europe. Like, no escaping it.
Well, I do know that, like, I'm gonna go against what I just said like 2 seconds ago, but I do know that there are lots of drug problems and problems with HIV in Russia and things like that. I guess I was just talking in terms of the religion itself, but yeah, the pause is definitely invading Eastern Europe.
That's what I'm wondering is, like, is it just a necessary, inevitable feature of modernization for things to become, like, disgusting and degenerate, or is it because of, like,
several factors: modernization, secularism. Some could attribute it to the Enlightenment, like a lot of reactionaries, neo-reactionaries types do. Some could attribute it to loss of proper governing, loss of guiding figures like monarchs or wise men, sages, and rabbis, some might say. And then, I mean, really, what it is how can I explain? Look at East Asia. You know, they're being afflicted by modernity and being over civilized in a manner rather similar to the West. But it's not just the West; it's also happening in the Middle East. Look at the Gulf and look at Israel. Also, it's happening all over the world. Modernity and secularism and several other things, I think, are at play here. But I really just think that there is something definitely going wrong. You are correct in noticing that. But I'm just not sure. What would you attribute? You'd probably look to a more materialist reason rather than something that's more ideological or spiritual. But I don't know. What would you say is the cause of this? Bad stock or something?
No, I
bad
think
socialization?
Not quite. I think it more has to do with, like, a fundamental property of the world, like just like an entropic property that.
So you think we're entering a Kali Yuga, like a Kali Yuga in a great sort of cycle?
What's a Kali Yuga?
It's the last stage.
Like the Dark Age. Yeah.
It's the last stage of the Hindu cycle. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I guess so. Like, I just feel like every sort of complicated system decays over time, just like the same way the human body does. You know, like first it's like individual organs and stuff, but over time it just becomes like a sort of system failure. I think that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's funny you mentioned that Kali Yuga, Babs, because I actually was into, I guess, like I was very interested in that kind of like looking at the cycles of history in Hinduism, just because I thought it was such an accurate portrayal of how history is. I guess it's similar to, like, I haven't read Spangler, but I would assume it's very similar to what Spangler says about civilizations kind of live, decay, die.
So you think that
reborn.
civilizations have their own life, have their own lifespans, and they're kind of like organisms? Spangler talked about like that there were talked about 3 civilizations in the kind of West Eurasian world, and he talked about the Magian civilization. That would be me and you, Mr. Levi. And then he talked about the Apollonian world, or the Apollonian civilization, which was sort of the North Mediterranean or ancient Greek and Roman civilization or spiritual current. And then finally there's the Faustian age. Would you say that we are still in a Faustian age, or are we in some other civilizational age?
I think we're in the decline.
The Faustian age being considered a Germanic age, by the way, for the audience.
Yeah, I think we're in the Kali Yuga of the two. What'd you say, the Faustian age? I was going to say the Teutonic age, but the same thing, I guess. We're definitely in the declining cycle, and we're going to have to see what bears fruit, because seeds get planted while other things die. So we'll just have to see what happens.
What about do you think it's possible to resuscitate a dead civilization like Magian civilization, or do you think that the Middle East and North Africa is doomed? Both of you.
I've heard, I don't remember who I heard this from, but I've heard that like theory that once a civilization dies, that there's no return, at least for that iteration of the civilization.
I think it'll be born again in a new way. Maybe it won't bear the same exact resemblance that it had in the past, but it'll definitely exist. And I think Middle Easterners and Jewish people and Arabs, I think they're resilient people. I think they can survive modernity. But when it comes to Europeans, specifically Northern Europeans, I don't know, they might be obliterated.
Well, read Faust. Faust is an opera, but Faustian civilization is sort of welcome back to you suffer. You suffer.
What if like most red pill people spend the most get in those societies?
Well, then I guess we would become similar to Jews in a way. We would kind of just be an insular group where we kind of do our own thing, and I don't think it wouldn't be the same kind of Faustian spirit that, say, drove America to the moon, because there would be so fewer of us.
Right.
So, I mean, but here's the other thing, I don't know. Maybe it's like race isn't the it's material, right? So regardless of what happens to whites or whatever, I mean, humanity will probably end one day. And so that's just one thing that we have to look at. So we have to look at, like, okay, if it's true that we will end one day, then we have to look at the possibility of transcendence and things beyond material. Because ultimately, if you take the line of thinking where it's like, oh, I need my people to survive, etc., like, and you don't have anything else, then you're just setting yourself up for a black pill in the end anyways.
Yeah, I actually agree with that completely, that we need to sort of, like, I was thinking, like, whatever our species evolves into, like, 1,000,000 years from now, it's probably going to be, like, totally unrecognizable to us, even if it is, like, a direct genetic line. Like, so at a certain point, like, if you're just thinking of it in terms of genetics, it's just not a very satisfying. It's just not a very satisfying model. So, like, there must be some, like, higher purpose, sort of, to the propagation of our species. Like,
yeah, what we should view it as is, like, each individual group of people or individual just by themselves, they improve themselves and try and order the world in a way as to improve things, and they do it for sort of a cosmic good instead of just a material end. And right, that's how I view it.
Do you think that, like, what do you think will happen to the species before, like, the sun expands and swallows the earth, and, like, what do you see as the future of life and humanity?
Well, I kind of see technology, like, I think somebody will, like, once again, I'm not trying to blackpill anybody. This is something that could happen. I think that there will be 3D printers, and somebody could get a hold of some dangerous technology, some crazy person with the high IQ, and at any moment could take down this whole thing. So, like, life is very fragile is the lesson of it. And we have to recognize that the age that we live in is very special, where we can communicate with people all around the world.
With like, non-biological components. If you could find the same sort of architecture as you would find in the brain, but with different
I'm not sure if this is making sense, but I think almost identify consciousness in different, like non-human objects. That makes sense. If you can identify
Panpsychism. We're talking about panpsychism. I think. Sort of.
It could be. I'm not sure.
All I know is that I'm not like a materialist reductionist when it comes to consciousness. Like, I don't think that the brain itself is the only thing that produces consciousness. I believe there's a dualistic aspect to it. So I don't know how that works. But logically, if you read like Ed Fazer's stuff, he's like a Catholic apologist, and he talks about, I think he wrote a book or something about like reputations to materialism. He gives some arguments about how consciousness sort of refutes, like if you logically come out and try and describe consciousness, it comes out in a way as to refute materialism or materialist reductionism in general.
Well, okay, let me ask you this. Do you think it's possible, like, how do we identify other things as conscious? So how do we know if humans are conscious? It might be possible to make that assumption more right? Like, required for consciousness. So every entity is conscious. So you can see a dog's brain is essentially the same as ours, in all the most important ways. So we can pretty safely assume that consciousness
Has no consciousness that makes human expression, like all the difference of if that robot is actually conscious or not.
So why wouldn't it be conscious though?
Because like you don't know if it has a human experience. Like consciousness itself is about like you experience things in the world. You have sight, smell, touch, things like that. If robots can just mimic that without actually having it, then how do you know it's actually consciousness?
So you're saying the biological material that our brains are made of is necessary for consciousness. Like, so if you were to build the exact same thing, like you were to build a brain, but just with like metal instead of, it's tissue, it would not be conscious.
What I'm saying is like, if you could build, like, I'm trying to strike at the problem of consciousness, which is like the only way that you know people are conscious as of right now, at least I'm kind of an amateur, so I'm not studied in philosophy of consciousness, but how I know is I assume other people are conscious, right? And what I'm saying is like, if you were to assume that if you were to assume that you could build a robot that could perfectly kind of copy human expressions and emotions, how would you know that that robot is actually conscious or not? Because like that would actually pose a philosophical problem.
Well, right. So I'm saying you could only say, or you could safely say that it's conscious to the same degree that you could say another person is conscious.
But you wouldn't know in the same way because like you've never done that before. Whereas with a human, you at least know with yourself, you're made of this biological material. This other person made of the same biological material. Like they're probably having a similar experience to me. Whereas with a robot is made of an entirely different material, and you don't know.
Well, okay, look at it this way. So, like, say, like, someone, like, one part of someone's brain fails, right? Like, something, like, the part of his brain that controls his dexterity or something like that, right? So, you replace it with, like, an artificial piece, and over time, you just keep pieces and, like, removing the old parts of the brain and replacing it with, like, mechanical. Like, at what point does it go from being, like, a biological human to, like, a, you know what I mean? Like, if you do
Sam Harris question, which is like, where is the self located? And I don't know. Like I don't know self located, but I do know that like if you read like Ed Fazer's arguments, like for example, I don't even know if I can remember this whole argument, but there was some argument that Ed Fazer posed that was like, it was talking about, he was saying like, if you were raised in a room from birth, like you only saw angels, and that there was like no way, and you kind of like one day a person opens up the door and like shows you the hard materialist would say like, okay, nothing because like the apple is made up of atoms. What you learned about the color red, and that's a, and so it's like it's a way more complicated. Right. I don't know if you caught that all. And this is a meta conversation. So I have to start because so I think I have about. Any last words? I remember I had a really quick response. Yeah, I'm just fucking. Our body right now. Materials are just. Looks like